The champagne glass shattered against marble. Silence dropped like a guillotine blade. Every breath in Azzuro's dining room held itself hostage as Don Alessio Rinaldi rose. 6 feet of Sicilian fury wrapped in a $15,000 suit. His hand moved toward his waist. Men in dark jackets straightened. Mara Vance, invisible as always, felt her feet locked to the floor. This was the moment people died. The moment empires shifted. The moment she should have stayed silent. Instead, words she'd buried for 15 years crawled up her throat in a dialect older than the marble beneath her feet. If you want to see how a ghost becomes a queen, stay until the end. Drop your city in the comments. I want to know how far this story travels. The thing about Manhattan's elite restaurants was that everyone played a part. The crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls. The silverware cost more than Mara's monthly rent. The patrons ate $30 oysters and pretended their money didn't smell like blood, offshore accounts, and the kind of deals that never made it into boardroom minutes. Mara Vance had been invisible for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. She'd perfected it. The way she moved through the dining room at Azzurro like air, like the space between seconds. Pour the wine. Clear the plates. Smile with her mouth, not her eyes. Exist in the peripheral vision of people who wouldn't remember her face if their lives depended on it. Most nights, that was enough. Tonight wasn't most nights. Table 7 had been trouble from the moment the reservation came through. Marco, the floor manager, had actually crossed himself when he saw the name. Rinaldi, he'd muttered. 3 reservations. The old man's coming. The kitchen had gone quiet. Even Chef Antoine, who once told a food critic to perform an anatomically impossible act, had checked his stations twice. The Rinaldi family didn't just eat at Azzurro. They owned half the block. The other half knew better than to ask questions. Mara had drawn the short straw. Table 7, Section 3. The corner booth where the lighting was dim enough for business, bright enough to see a man's eyes when he lied. Don Alessio Rinaldi arrived at 8:47. 3 minutes late, which Mara had learned meant he'd been watching the entrance, cataloging who came and went. Power wasn't about being on time. Power was about making time wait. He was 73 and looked like violence carved from old wood. Silver hair swept back from a face that had probably been handsome before it learned to terrify. His suit was charcoal, custom-tailored to hide the slight stoop in his shoulders, age creeping in like rust on iron. Behind him walked 4 men in cheaper suits, eyes constantly moving, hands hovering near their jackets. The restaurant didn't go silent. That would have been too obvious, but the volume dropped, conversations sliding into lower registers. Table 7 became the sun, and everything else orbited. Mara approached with water and menus. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Azzurro." The Dawn didn't look at her. None of them did. She was furniture, wallpaper, the help. "Scotch," one of the younger men said. "Macallan 25. Neat." Right away. She'd memorized their faces on the way over. Survival instinct, something her grandmother had taught her. Know who's in the room, Piccola. Know their hands, know their eyes. The Dawn's son arrived 10 minutes later. Victor Rinaldi was everything his father wasn't, polished where Alessio was rough, educated where the old man had learned business in basements and back rooms. Harvard Business School, according to the society pages Mara sometimes read on her phone during smoke breaks she didn't take. 38, divorced, legitimized the family money through real estate ventures that probably laundered more cash than they generated. He wore his suit like armor. His smile never reached the calculation in his eyes. "Father." Victor leaned down, kissed the Dawn's cheek, a gesture so formal it looked rehearsed. "Late." The old man's voice was gravel and broken glass. "Traffic on the bridge." "Traffic." The Dawn's fingers drummed the table. "In my day, traffic meant something different." Mara poured wine she couldn't pronounce from bottles she couldn't afford. She'd gotten good at disappearing into the mechanics of service, the angle of the pour, the placement of the glass, the invisible choreography that kept her beneath notice. The conversation was business dressed up in pleasantries, development deals, permits, council members who needed convincing. The kind of talk where every sentence had another meaning underneath, coded in pauses and emphasis. She was clearing the appetizer plates when it happened. The 6th man arrived without fanfare, threading through tables like he owned the air. Antonio Gallo. Mara knew the name the way everyone in this world knew certain names, whispered, feared, never said loud enough for echo. He was younger than the Don, maybe 60, with the kind of tan that came from Caribbean islands and other people's money. His suit was Milano. His watch was platinum. His smile was a knife. Alessio. He didn't wait for invitation, sliding into the booth beside one of the Don's men, forcing the younger man to shift. A power play so subtle Mara almost missed it. I wasn't aware we had dinner plans. The temperature at table 7 dropped 10 degrees. We don't. The Don's voice hadn't changed pitch, but something underneath it had shifted, like ice cracking under weight. Then what fortune? Gallo signaled Mara without looking at her. Champagne, Dom Perignon, 2008. She moved to the bar, but her attention stayed locked on table 7. The other diners pretended not to watch. The bodyguards had gone statue still. Victor's voice was smooth, diplomatic. Mr. Gallo, this is a private dinner. Private? Gallo laughed, the sound wrong in the elegant space. Your father and I built this city's private spaces, boy. We built the walls people hide behind. Don't lecture me on privacy. Mara returned with the champagne. Her hands were steady, years of practice hiding the tremor underneath. She poured the first glass. The Moretti contract, Gallo said, watching bubbles rise. I heard it went to your people. Did you? Not a question. The Don hadn't moved. I had interest in that property, significant interest. Then you should have bid higher. The champagne glass in Gallo's hand paused halfway to his mouth. Is that how you see it? That's how it is. Something passed between the two old men, something decades old and sharp as piano wire. Mara stepped back, trying to fade into the wallpaper again. Respect, Gallo said softly. That's what built this thing of ours, Alessio. Respect and tradition. You remember tradition? I remember when men said what they meant. The Don's fingers had stopped drumming. His hands were flat on the table now, absolutely still. Instead of showing up uninvited to other men's dinners with insults dressed as conversation. The word hung in the air like a blade. Insult. Victor tried to salvage it. Gentlemen, perhaps we could discuss this. Your father understands me perfectly. Gallo's smile never wavered. Don't you, old friend? You understand that some things can't be bought. Some allegiances can't be broken without consequences. Consequences. The Don repeated the word like he was tasting it. You come to my table and threaten me with consequences? I come to remind you. The Don moved faster than a 73-year-old man should move. The champagne glass, delicate, expensive, full, sailed past Gallo's head and exploded against the marble column behind him. Crystal and wine sprayed the oyster-colored wall like arterial blood. The restaurant died. Not went quiet. Died. Every conversation, every clink of silverware, every breath, gone. The maitre d' froze mid-stride. A waiter's hand locked on his tray. In the kitchen, visible through the window, Chef Antoine's knife stopped mid-chop. Don Alessio Rinaldi stood, the motion smooth despite his age. His hand moved toward his waist, toward the jacket that definitely concealed something that wasn't a wallet. You come into my presence, the Don said, voice barely above a whisper, but carrying to every corner of the room, and you dare speak to me of respect? Gallo hadn't moved, hadn't flinched, but Mara saw it, the calculation behind his eyes, the math of survival running through his head. 4 bodyguards to his none. A room full of witnesses who'd swear they saw nothing. The Don's men had risen, not threatening, not yet, but there, present, waiting. Victor stood, hands raised in placation. Father, this piece of shit, the Don continued, still in that terrible whisper, comes to my table, drinks my wine, and insults me in my own place. Mara's feet had locked to the floor. This was the moment, the tipping point, the instant where words became violence, became bodies, became the kind of headlines that disappeared by morning. Every instinct screamed at her to move, to back away, to be anywhere else. She stepped forward instead. Later, she wouldn't remember making the choice. It happened in the space between heartbeats, in the gap between thought and action. Muscle memory older than her years in Manhattan, older than her carefully constructed invisibility. Signore, she said. The wrong word would have ended it. The wrong tone would have turned the Don's fury on her. She didn't use English. Calmatevi, vossignoria. The words came from somewhere deep, somewhere she'd buried 15 years ago with her grandmother's funeral dirt. Calabrian dialect, old country Italian that hadn't been spoken in American restaurants since the first-generation immigrants died off. Un uomo della vostra statura non dovrebbe sporcarsi le mani con questa spazzatura. A man of your stature shouldn't dirty his hands with this garbage. The Don's head snapped toward her, really looked at her for the first time. Mara felt the weight of that attention like a physical force. His eyes were dark, ancient, unreadable. She saw him catalog her features: the olive skin, the sharp nose, the dark hair pulled into a utilitarian bun, searching for something. Chisetu, who are you? Her grandmother's voice in her head. Never lie to powerful men. They smell deception, like sharks smell blood. Nessuno, Don Rinaldi. Ma mia nonna mi ha insegnato che gli uomini d'onore non versano il proprio sangue per I cani randagi. Nobody, Don Rinaldi, but my grandmother taught me that men of honor don't spill their own blood for stray dogs. Silence stretched like hot glass. Then the Don smiled. It wasn't warm, it wasn't kind, but the fury had vanished like smoke. He sat down. The entire restaurant seemed to exhale. Sag parole, the Don said. Wise words. Da chi è tua nonna? Who is your grandmother? And there it was. The question Mara had spent 15 years avoiding. Lucia Vance. Prima era Lucia Salvatore. Lucia Vance. Before, she was Lucia Salvatore. Something flickered across the Don's face. Recognition? Surprise? It vanished too quickly to name. Gallo used the moment to stand, adjusting his jacket with hands that only barely trembled. I see you have new advisors, Alessio. Young, pretty. The insinuation was clear. We'll continue this conversation another time. No, the Don said, still watching Mara. We won't. Gallo left, his exit neither rushed nor casual. The other diners slowly returned to their meals, their conversations careful and quiet. Victor was staring at her. So were the bodyguards. Siediti, the Don said. Sit. Signore, I'm working. Siediti. Not a request. Marco appeared at her elbow, his face pale. Don Rinaldi, if our server has been inappropriate, your server, the Don interrupted, just prevented a regrettable incident. You should give her a raise. His eyes never left Mara's face. Ora siediti, ragazza. Dobbiamo parlare. Now sit, girl. We need to talk. Mara sat. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that sitting at a table with Don Alessio Rinaldi, with his calculating son and his dead-eyed bodyguards, was the opposite of invisible, was stepping into a spotlight she'd spent half her life avoiding. But the Don had asked. And in this world, when men like Alessio Rinaldi asked, you didn't refuse. Salvatore, the Don said, tasting the name. Di dove? From where? Calabria. Un piccolo paese fuori Reggio. Calabria. A small town outside Reggio. E tua nonna? Dov'è adesso? And your grandmother? Where is she now? Morta, 15 anni fa. Dead, 15 years ago. The Don nodded slowly, like this confirmed something. Lucia Salvatore. I knew that name once. She married a man named Vance? The. American? Irish-American. He died before I was born. Victor leaned forward, his voice smooth but edged. Father, perhaps this conversation would be better continued elsewhere. The Don silenced him with a look. Tuo padre? Your father? And there it was. The question that lived in the center of everything, the hole in the story of Mara's life. Non lo so, she said. I don't know. Something in the Don's expression shifted. Not soften. Men like him didn't soften, but changed. Tua nonna non te l'ha detto? Mi ha detto che era un segreto, che alcuni segreti proteggono le persone che amiamo. She told me it was a secret, that some secrets protect the people we love. The Don sat back, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Around them, Azuro had returned to its careful ballet of service and discretion. But Table 7 remained an island, a pocket universe governed by different rules. "Marco," the Don called. The floor manager materialized instantly. "You'll send this young woman home early, with full pay. She's had an eventful evening." "Of course, Don Rinaldi." "E domani," the Don continued, switching back to dialect. "Verrai a trovarmi. Victor ti darà l'indirizzo. And tomorrow, you'll come visit me. Victor will give you the address." It wasn't a request. "Signore, I don't think... Non pensare, vieni." "Don't think. Come." He pulled a card from his jacket, slid it across the table. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, an address in Sutton Place. "Alle 2 del pomeriggio, non essere in ritardo." At 2 in the afternoon. Don't be late. Mara took the card because refusing would have been worse, because men like Alessio Rinaldi didn't accept refusals. She stood, her legs uncertain beneath her. "Grazie, signore." "Non mi ringraziare ancora," the Don said. "Don't thank me yet. Domani capirai perché." Tomorrow, you'll understand why. Quote, "The locker room smelled like industrial soap and the dreams people gave up." Mara changed out of her uniform with hands that had started shaking the moment she was alone. The card sat in her bag like a live grenade. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from a roommate, 2 texts from Marco asking if she was okay, and 1 voicemail from a number she didn't recognize. She played the voicemail. "Miss Vance?" Victor Rinaldi's voice, smooth as expensive whiskey. "I trust my father's invitation wasn't too alarming. He can be intense. But I think you'll find tomorrow's conversation illuminating. Also, purely as a precaution, I'd avoid taking the subway home tonight. A car is waiting on 48th Street, black Mercedes. The driver's name is Carlo. He's expecting you." The message ended. Mara stared at her phone. Avoid the subway. As a precaution. Meaning Gallo might have people watching. Meaning the moment she stepped outside, she stepped into a world where waitresses didn't just go home and sleep off bad shifts. She'd been invisible for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. 1 conversation in her grandmother's dialect, and that invisibility had shattered like champagne crystal against marble. The Mercedes was exactly where Victor said it would be. Carlo was 60, gray-suited, and opened the door without speaking. The car smelled like leather and the kind of money that didn't need to announce itself. Mara gave her address in Jackson Heights. Carlo nodded, pulled into traffic. They drove in silence through Manhattan's nighttime arteries, across the Queensboro Bridge, where the city lights looked like stars someone had spilled across velvet. Jackson Heights was a different world. Bodegas and street vendors, apartments stacked like shipping containers, the beautiful chaos of 100 cultures colliding. Carlo pulled up to her building. "Miss Vance." "Thank you." "One moment." He handed her an envelope. "From Mr. Victor. He said you'd understand." Inside was cash. A lot of cash. More than she made in 3 months at Azuro. And a note, handwritten in fountain pen. "For the inconvenience, and because my father's curiosity, once awakened, is difficult to satisfy. Whatever you decide to tell him tomorrow or not tell him is your choice. But choose carefully. The Rinaldi family has a long memory." VR. Mara sat in her apartment, 300 square feet of IKEA furniture and second-hand ambition, and tried to sleep. Couldn't. The city noise that usually lulled her felt threatening now. Every car backfire was a gunshot. Every raised voice was an argument that could escalate. She pulled out the shoebox from the back of her closet, the one she never opened, the one that held everything her grandmother had left her. Photographs first. Lucia Salvatore in her 20s, beautiful and severe in a dress that looked homemade. The old country visible in her eyes, the hardness of generations who'd learned to survive on rocks and stubbornness. Letters in Italian, the handwriting shaky. Mara had read them once, after the funeral, then never again. They were love letters, she thought, or confessions, or both. A rosary with beads worn smooth. A knife, small, wickedly sharp with a handle carved from olive wood. And at the bottom, wrapped in cloth, a photograph Mara had never been able to explain. It showed a young man, maybe 30, with dark hair and eyes that held intelligence and something else, something dangerous. He was standing outside a restaurant, not Azzurro, but something older, more weathered. New York, but decades ago, when the city had harder edges. On the back, in her grandmother's handwriting, Milano, 1987, non dimenticarlo. Milano 1987. Don't forget him. Milano wasn't a person. It was a name. Mara had tried searching for it once, late at night when loneliness and wine made her brave. Milano, Italian, obviously, but also 1,000 restaurants, 1,000 businesses, 1,000 dead ends in a city that swallowed history like water. She'd given up. Now staring at the photograph, she saw what she hadn't seen before. In the background of the image, barely visible through the restaurant window, a younger Alessio Rinaldi. Her hands were shaking again. Tuo padre? Non lo so. But her grandmother had known, had kept this photograph for 38 years, had died without saying why. Some secrets protect the people we love. Mara didn't sleep that night. She watched the ceiling, watched the patterns of streetlight and shadow, and tried to convince herself that she could still walk away, that she could call Azzurro tomorrow, quit, disappear into the city's 8 million anonymous faces. She tried to convince herself she didn't want to know. She was still lying to herself when her alarm went off at 7. Sutton Place at 2 in the afternoon was a different species of New York. Old money, the kind that had been here since the Gilded Age and had learned to hide behind limestone facades and doormen who looked like they'd fought at Normandy. The address led to a townhouse that probably cost more than Mara would make in 10 lifetimes. Red brick, pristine, a door that looked bulletproof. She rang the bell. Carlo answered. Miss Vance, right on time. He escorted her through a foyer that felt like a museum, marble floors, oil paintings that were probably originals, a staircase that curved like a question mark. The sitting room was all dark wood and leather, books lining the walls in languages Mara recognized, and some she didn't. Don Alessio sat in a wingback chair that might have been a throne, his hands folded across a cane she hadn't seen last night. Victor stood by the window, watching the street below. Saedity, the Don said, the same command from last night, but softer now, almost gentle. Mara sat. Vuoi qualcosa da bere? Want something to drink? No, grazie. The Don studied her the way someone might study a painting they were considering buying, looking for authenticity, for provenance, for the story underneath the surface. Your grandmother, he said, switching to English, was an interesting woman. Came to New York in 1984, I believe. Married Thomas Vance 2 years later. Worked as a seamstress in the garment district. Lived quietly, died quietly. Raised her granddaughter to be invisible. Mara's stomach went cold. How do you know? I make it my business to know things. The Don's voice was matter of fact. Especially when those things walk into my dinner and speak Calabrian dialect like they were born to it. When they carry themselves like they understand power. When they look like ghosts, I've been trying to forget. He gestured to Victor. His son handed him a folder. Riconosci questo uomo? The Don held up a photograph. Do you recognize this man? It was the same photograph from Mara's shoebox. The young man outside Milano. But this print was clearer, better preserved. L'ho visto in una foto di mia nonna, Mara said. I've seen him in my grandmother's photo. Suo nome era Domenico Milano. His name was Domenico Milano. People called him Dom. He worked for me 38 years ago. Smart, capable. One of the few men I trusted. Was past tense. Cosa gli è successo? What happened to him? The Don's expression hardened. È morto. Tradimento, hanno detto. Betrayal, they said. Information sold to rivals, deals compromised. He was executed in 1987 behind a warehouse in Red Hook. Quick, professional, the way we handled traitors. Mara felt the room tilt. Ci ha detto che era un traditore? Antonio Gallo. The Don's voice was bitter. My most trusted advisor at the time. He brought me proof, documents, financial records. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence... He shook his head. Ho dato l'ordine io stesso. I gave the order myself. The silence in the room had weight. Dopo, the Don continued, Lucia Salvatore disappeared, vanished completely. I assumed she'd gone back to Italy. I never... He paused, something almost like regret crossing his face. Non sapevo che fosse incinta. I didn't know she was pregnant. The world reorganized itself around those words. Domenico Milano. Dead in 1987. Betrayed, supposedly, by the same man who'd crashed their dinner last night. Lucia Salvatore, pregnant, fleeing to Jackson Heights to raise her daughter's child in anonymity. Mio padre, Mara said. The words felt foreign. My father. Possibly, Victor interjected, his voice careful. We'd need to verify... Look at her, the Don snapped. Guardala bene. Look at her carefully. E Domenico con una gonna. She's Domenico in a skirt. Mara's hands had gone numb. She looked at the photograph again, really looked, saw the nose, the set of the eyes, the sharp intelligence in the expression, saw her own face staring back across 38 years. Why, she managed. Perché mi stai dicendo questo? Why are you telling me this? The Don leaned forward, the cane gripped in both hands. Perché ho fatto un errore. Ho ucciso un uomo fedele basandomi sulle parole di un serpente. Because I made a mistake. I killed a loyal man based on a snake's words. E perché quella serpente ieri sera ha mostrato il suo vero volto quando ti ha guardato e ha visto un fantasma. And because that snake showed his true face last night when he looked at you and saw a ghost. Gallo knew, Victor added. The moment you spoke, he knew who you had to be. That's why he left. He's probably scrambling right now, trying to figure out how much you know, how much your grandmother told you. She told me nothing, Mara said. Niente. Just old stories. Just the language. The Don smiled, sharp and cold. Allora dobbiamo scoprire cosa non ti ha detto. E perché? Then we have to discover what she didn't tell you, and why. Outside, Manhattan continued its indifferent ballet. Traffic, commerce, lives intersecting and diverging without meaning. In the townhouse on Sutton Place, Mara Vance felt the weight of inheritance settle on her shoulders like stones. Her father, murdered. Her grandmother, silent. A betrayal 3 decades old, still breathing. Cosa vuoi da me? She asked. What do you want from me? Don Alessio stood, the cane supporting weight that suddenly looked heavier than before. Voglio giustizia, he said. I want justice. Per tuo padre. Per tutti gli anni che ho sprecato fidandomi dell'uomo sbagliato. For your father. For all the years I wasted trusting the wrong man. He walked to the window, stood beside his son, 2 generations of power looking out at the city they'd helped build. E tu? And you? Cosa vuoi tu, Mara Vance? Mara looked at the photograph in her hands, at the father she'd never known, at the life her grandmother had abandoned to keep her safe. She thought about invisibility, about 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days of being furniture, about the careful construction of a life so small, so quiet, that nothing could touch it. That life had shattered the moment she opened her mouth. Voglio la verità, she said. I want the truth. The Don turned, and his smile this time held something that might have been approval, might have been recognition. Allora, he said, cominciamo. Then let's begin. The truth, as it turned out, lived in bankers' boxes stacked in a basement that smelled like old paper and older grudges. Victor led the way down narrow stairs that creaked under their weight, flipping switches that brought fluorescent lights buzzing to life. The basement ran the length of the townhouse, lined with filing cabinets and shelves that held 3 generations of carefully documented sins. My father keeps everything, Victor said, pulling a box marked 1987 from a shelf. Every transaction, every conversation that mattered. He says history is written by whoever keeps the best records. Mara stood in the center of the room, feeling like she'd stepped into a tomb. The air was cold, preserved. He knew you'd bring me down here. He knows everything that happens in his house. Victor set the box on a metal table, dust rising in the harsh light. It's his gift and his curse. Upstairs, the Don was making phone calls. Mara had heard the shift in his voice as they left. Italian sliding into English, the language of business, summoning people, arranging things. moving pieces on a board Mara was only beginning to see. Victor opened the box. Inside, file folders organized with obsessive precision. Dates, names, locations. Each one a story, a transaction, a moment when money or power changed hands. "What exactly are we looking for?" Mara asked. "Proof." Victor pulled out a folder, scanned the contents. "My father has spent 38 years trusting Gallo, building empires with him. Gallo's fingerprints are on half our legitimate businesses. If he's been lying since 1987, there'll be cracks. Inconsistencies. Things that didn't make sense at the time, but make perfect sense now." He handed Mara a document. Financial records, the kind that required 3 accounting degrees to decipher. "Your father, Domenico, was handling the East Side development deal. 17 million in construction contracts. The accusation was that he'd been skimming, selling information to the Calabrese family. They were our rivals back then." Mara studied the numbers. They meant nothing to her. Columns of figures that might as well have been hieroglyphics. "I don't understand accounting." "You don't need to." Victor pulled out another file, laid it beside the first. "Look at the dates." Domenico was killed March 15th, 1987. These financial irregularities that Gallo discovered? All documented March 1st through March 10th. 10 days of evidence, perfectly organized. Almost like someone knew they'd need to build a case. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere above them, floorboards creaked. "People steal over time," Victor continued. "They get comfortable, sloppy. They don't suddenly start and stop in a 10-day window unless they're being set up." He looked at her, and for the first time Mara saw something other than calculation in his eyes. Something that might have been anger. "Gallo was my father's accountant back then. He had access to everything. He could have created these records himself." "Could have," Mara said. "That's not proof." "No." Victor's jaw tightened. "It's not. Which is why we're going to find it." They worked for 3 hours. Victor pulled files, cross-referenced dates, built timelines on yellow legal pads in handwriting so precise it looked typeset. Mara read documents she barely understood, looking for patterns, for anything that felt wrong. Her father's name appeared again and again. Domenico Milano, trusted associate. The man who handled the family's expansion into legitimate construction. A ghost in manila folders, real as the air and just as untouchable. "Here!" Victor's voice cut through the silence. "The Calabrese connection. Gallo claimed your father was feeding them information about our bid structures. But look," he pointed to a document. "The Calabrese made their move on the Brooklyn project 2 weeks before your father supposedly started talking to them. How did they know our numbers if he wasn't talking yet?" Mara leaned closer. The document was a memo, typewritten, addressed to the Dawn, dated February 20th, 1987. "Our sources indicate the Calabrese family has obtained sensitive information regarding the Brooklyn development. Recommend immediate investigation. Signed, Antonio Gallo." "He's warning your father about a leak," Mara said slowly, "before the leak supposedly started. Or he's establishing a paper trail, making himself look vigilant while he sets up his patsy." Victor pulled another file. "And here, this is the smoking gun he brought to my father. Bank statements showing deposits to an account under a false name. $50,000 over 3 months. Gallo said he traced it back to your father. The bank statements were clean, official. Numbers that didn't lie because numbers never did." "But?" Mara prompted. "But the account was opened February 1st, 1987, 6 weeks before the first deposit. Who opens a bank account and waits 6 weeks to use it?" "Someone who's being framed," Mara said. "Someone who had an account opened in their name without knowing it." Victor smiled, sharp and cold. It was his father's smile. "Now you're thinking like them." The basement door opened. Carlo descended, moving with the careful precision of a man who'd learned to make his footsteps heard. "Mr. Victor, the Dawn wants to see you both. We have company." Company, in this world, was never casual. They climbed the stairs, Mara's legs stiff from sitting on a concrete floor. The townhouse's main level seemed brighter after the basement gloom, late afternoon sun cutting through windows in geometric patterns. In the sitting room, 2 men Mara didn't recognize stood with the careful stillness of people who knew how to wait. Both wore suits that cost more than her monthly rent. Both had eyes that moved constantly, cataloging exits, measuring distances. The Don sat in his chair, the cane across his lap like a scepter. Mara, Victor, meet Luca and Stefano. They work for me in capacities that don't appear on any payroll. Translation: enforcers. The kind of men who made problems disappear. We have confirmation, Luca said. His voice was rough, Brooklyn accent thick enough to cut. Gallo's been making calls, a lot of calls, to people he don't usually talk to. What kind of people? Victor asked. The kind who solve problems permanently. Stefano pulled out his phone, showed a photograph. Grainy, taken from distance. A man in a car talking on a phone. This is Gallo 2 hours ago, meeting with Dante Russo. The Don's expression went granite. Russo. Who's Russo? Mara asked. The kind of animal that gives our world a bad name. The Don's voice was flat. He handles wet work, assassinations, the jobs that can't be traced back. If Gallo is talking to Russo, he's preparing to eliminate a threat. The room's temperature seemed to drop. He saw me, Mara said. Last night, he knows who I am. He knows who you might be, Victor corrected, which is almost worse. Uncertainty makes people dangerous. The Don stood, the movement requiring effort he tried to hide. Luca, Stefano, I want eyes on Gallo every minute. I want to know who he talks to, where he goes, what he eats for breakfast. Capisci? Si, Don Rinaldi. And Russo? If he moves toward anyone connected to this family, you have authorization to handle it. Handle it. The euphemism was paper thin. After Luca and Stefano left, the sitting room felt smaller. The Don poured himself scotch from a crystal decanter, didn't offer any to Victor or Mara. His hands trembled slightly, age and anger combining. 38 years, he said, more to himself than them. I trusted him for 38 years, built businesses with him, made him rich. And the entire time, we still don't have proof, Victor said quietly, not enough to act on. Then we get proof. The Don's voice was steel. We find what we need, and we end this. Mara's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You should leave the city, tonight. This is a courtesy you won't get twice. She showed it to Victor. He took the phone, ran the number through some app she didn't recognize. Burner. Probably already destroyed. Gallo? The Don asked. Or someone working for him. Victor handed the phone back to Mara. He's trying to scare you off. Is it working? The Don looked at her directly, no pretense. Mara thought about Jackson Heights, about her apartment with its secondhand furniture and carefully constructed anonymity, about shifts at Azzurro carrying plates for people who never saw her face, about invisibility, about her father, executed in a warehouse because someone had needed a convenient corpse. No, she said, it's not working. The Don's smile was approval and warning combined. Good, because from this moment, you're family, and family doesn't run. Family. The word carried weight here, meant something beyond genetics and Christmas dinners. It meant obligation, protection, the kind of ties that ended in loyalty or blood. She needs protection, Victor said. If Gallo's hired Russo's, she'll stay here, the Don interrupted. Guest room on the 3rd floor. Carlo will bring her things from Jackson Heights. I have a job. You had a job, the Don corrected. Now you have a purpose. Tomorrow, we're meeting with someone who might have answers. Someone who knew your father, who was there when he died. The room tilted again, reality rearranging itself. Who? Mara asked. Father Lorenzo. He was our priest back then. Heard confessions, blessed our businesses, buried our dead. The Don's voice was soft. He buried Domenico, and he knows secrets that never made it to confession. Night fell on Sutton Place like a curtain. The guest room was larger than Mara's entire apartment, decorated in neutrals that probably had expensive names. Cream, taupe, Griga. The bed was soft enough to drown in. She didn't sleep. Instead, she sat by the window, watching the city beyond the glass. Manhattan at night was a different creature. Neon and headlights, the vertical sprawl of ambition made concrete. Somewhere out there, Gallo was making plans. Russo was accepting contracts. The machinery of violence was warming up. A knock at the door, soft enough to be polite. Come in. Victor entered, carrying 2 glasses and a bottle of something amber. Figured you might need this. He poured without asking, handed her a glass. The whiskey burned smooth, expensive. How are you holding up? He asked. I found out my father was murdered this afternoon. I'm hiding in a crime boss's townhouse because a hitman might be after me. I'm holding up great. Victor sat in the chair opposite her, loosened his tie. For the first time, he looked tired. Human. For what it's worth, you're handling this better than most people would. Most people don't grow up with grandmothers who teach them Calabrian and how to read a room for threats. She was protecting you. By lying to me. Mara took another drink. By letting me think I was nobody. That I came from nothing. Maybe that's exactly what you needed to be. To survive. Victor studied his glass. My father raised me in this world. Taught me the rules, the language, the careful dance of power. And you want to know the truth? I've spent my entire life wishing I'd been raised as nobody. Wishing I'd had the choice to walk away. Mara looked at him. Really looked. Saw past the tailored suit and Harvard polish to something underneath, something trapped. Why don't you? She asked. Walk away. Because family doesn't run. He smiled, bitter. And because I'm good at this. The legitimate businesses, the legal frameworks that let us operate. I've built an empire that looks clean from every angle. My father's legacy won't die with the old ways. It'll evolve. And that's my purpose. That's depressing. That's dynasty. He refilled her glass. But you have a choice. My father offering you family, offering you truth. You can still refuse. Go back to being invisible. It's not too late. You don't believe that? No, Victor admitted. I don't. The moment you spoke at that table, you became visible. And in this world, visible means vulnerable. They drank in silence, the whiskey building warmth against the night's chill. What was he like? Mara finally asked. My father. You were, what, 5 when he died? 4. Victor's expression went distant, remembering. I barely knew him, but I remember his voice. Deep, patient. He used to bring me chocolate when he visited. Expensive stuff, imported. My mother hated it, said it would rot my teeth. Domenico would wink at me, like we were conspirators. Mara felt something crack in her chest. This stranger, this ghost, had been real. Had brought chocolate to children. Had lived. My father trusted him completely, Victor continued, more than anyone except Gallo. When the accusation came, it broke something in him. I remember the night before it happened. My father locked himself in his study. I could hear him through the door. Not crying, just breaking. He killed an innocent man. He executed a traitor, or thought he did. The evidence was convincing. Victor met her eyes. That's what makes this worse. Gallo didn't just lie. He built a perfect lie. Documentation, witnesses, financial trails. He made my father into the weapon. And now? Now we prove it. And then, Victor's voice went cold. My father will do what he does to traitors. Mara thought about justice, about revenge, about the difference between the two, if difference existed. What if we can't prove it? She asked. Victor smiled, and it was all Rinaldi. Then we'll create a situation where Gallo proves it himself. The whiskey bottle was half empty when Victor finally left. Mara lay in the expensive bed, staring at the ceiling, and tried to feel something other than vertigo. 24 hours ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was drowning in legacy, in blood debts 3 decades old, in the careful violence of men who built empires on broken rules. Her phone buzzed. Another text, different number. Your grandmother died protecting you. Don't waste her sacrifice. This time, there was an image attached. A photograph, old, grainy. Lucia Salvatore, young and pregnant, standing outside a bus terminal. The date stamp read April 1987, 1 month after Domenico's death. Mara stared at the image, at her grandmother's face, fierce even in flight, at the small suitcase clutched in her hand, at the determination in her expression. She wasn't running from grief. She was running with purpose. The phone buzzed again. Same number. She knew things. Dangerous things. Things that could destroy empires. Things she never told you because some knowledge kills. Mara's hands shook as she typed, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. Someone who owed Domenico a debt. Someone who's been waiting 38 years to pay it. Tomorrow, after you meet the priest, go to the address I'm sending. Alone. Come unarmed. Come ready for truth. An address in Red Hook appeared, the same neighborhood where her father had died. Mara deleted the messages, then restored them. Deleted them again. Her grandmother's voice in her head. Some secrets protect the people we love. But Lucia was dead, and Mara was tired of being protected. She fell asleep as dawn started bleeding gray into the sky, the phone clutched in her hand, the unknown number glowing like a promise or a trap. Morning came with Carlo knocking softly, bearing coffee and the kind of breakfast that probably required a chef. Mara ate mechanically, her mind already at the church, already in Red Hook, already chasing ghosts. The Don was waiting in the foyer, dressed in black like he was attending a funeral. Maybe he was. "Father Lorenzo expects us at 10, he said. "The church is in Little Italy, or what's left of it." Victor was already in the car, working on a laptop, his fingers moving across keys with practiced efficiency. Gallo's been quiet this morning. No calls, no meetings. Either he's spooked or he's planning something. "Both," the Don said. Antonio was always good at planning. The drive took 20 minutes through traffic that moved like cold honey. Little Italy had shrunk over the decades, gentrification and Chinatown squeezing it into a few blocks of tourist traps and authentic holdouts. The church stood on a corner, old brick and older faith, sandwiched between a vegan restaurant and a luxury condo development. San Gennaro, Saint Januarius, the patron saint of Naples, protector against disasters. The irony wasn't lost on Mara. Inside, the church was cool and quiet, smelling of incense and wood polish and centuries of desperate prayers. Sunlight filtered through stained glass, painting the pews in reds and blues and golds. Father Lorenzo was waiting by the altar. He had to be 80, small and bent, wearing black vestments that looked older than he was. But his eyes were sharp, alert, cataloging them as they approached. "Alessio," he said. His voice carried the weight of decades. "It's been too long." "Father." The Don's tone held respect Mara hadn't heard before. Even killers feared priests, apparently. Or maybe just judgment. The priest's gaze moved to Mara. Stopped. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, surprise, grief. All three, cycling too fast to separate. "Madonna Santa," he breathed. Domenico's eyes. "I'd know them anywhere." "Father Lorenzo," Victor said quietly. "This is Mara Vance, Lucia Salvatore's granddaughter." "And Domenico's daughter." Not a question. The priest moved closer, studying her face like he was reading scripture. "Your grandmother came to me before she left. Made me promise never to speak of certain things. But she's gone now, and you're here, and promises to the dead don't bind like they used to." He gestured toward a side chapel, small and private. They followed, the Don's cane tapping against stone floors. The chapel held 6 pews and a statue of Mary, her expression serene and sad in equal measure. They sat, the priest across from them, separated by wood and decades and secrets that had outlived their keepers. "What did she tell you?" Mara asked. Father Lorenzo folded his hands, the gesture automatic. That Domenico was innocent, that he'd been murdered for discovering something Antonio Gallo wanted hidden, that she had proof but couldn't use it without painting a target on her unborn child. The chapel went silent except for the distant sound of traffic. "What kind of proof?" Victor leaned forward. "A ledger. A second set of books that Domenico kept." The priest's voice was steady, confessional. He didn't trust the official accounts. He thought someone was skimming, hiding money, building a parallel empire. So he kept his own records, everything that flowed through the family's construction businesses, every dollar, every contract, every discrepancy. The Don's knuckles had gone white on his cane. "Where is it?" "Lucia wouldn't tell me. Said the less I knew, the safer I'd be." Father Lorenzo looked at Mara. "But she did say one thing. She said that when the time was right, when you were strong enough, the truth would find you. That Domenico built safeguards, that he was too smart to die without insurance. Insurance, Mara repeated, like a dead man's switch, like a legacy. The priest stood, moved to a cabinet built into the chapel wall. He pulled out a small box, metal and old, locked with a combination. Lucia left this with me, made me swear I'd give it to you if you ever came looking, if you ever spoke her language. He set the box on the pew beside Mara. She said you'd know the combination, that she'd taught it to you without teaching it. Mara stared at the lock. 3 numbers, 0 through 9. Thousands of possible combinations. Her grandmother's voice reading to her as a child. In the old country, we measured time differently, by saints and harvests and the turning of seasons. She tried her birthday. Nothing. Her grandmother's birthday. Nothing. Then she remembered the story Lucia used to tell about the day she met Domenico. The Feast of San Gennaro, 1986. September 19th, 1986. The lock clicked open. Inside, a key. Small, brass, old-fashioned, the kind that opened safety deposit boxes before everything went digital. And a note, in her grandmother's handwriting. Banca d'Italia, branch 117, box 439. The past is buried but not dead. Dig carefully. Victor was already on his phone. Branch 117 is in Brooklyn, near the old Navy Yard. The building's still there, but the bank closed in 1995. Everything got transferred to, he paused, fingers moving. Chase. The boxes were relocated to their main vault in Manhattan. So we go there, Mara said. We open it. We find the ledger. We'll need identification, Victor said. Proof that you're entitled to access it. The box would have been in Lucia's name or Domenico's. Well, and if Gallo finds out we're looking, the Don started, then he'll know we're close. Mara stood, the key clutched in her palm. Good. Let him know. Let him sweat. Father Lorenzo smiled, sad and knowing. You have your father's courage and your grandmother's fire. That's either a blessing or a curse. Maybe both, Mara said. They left the church with more questions than answers, but at least now the questions had direction. The key felt heavy in Mara's pocket, heavier than its physical weight. It was possibility, proof, the kind of truth that could end empires or start wars. In the car, Victor made calls, pulled strings, arranged for expedited access to the safety deposit box using documents Mara didn't ask about and probably didn't want to understand. The Don sat in silence, staring out at Little Italy sliding past. What was left of it? The neighborhood where he'd built his empire, where he'd made decisions that echoed across decades. I should have known, he said finally. When Antonio brought me that evidence, it was too perfect, too complete, but I was angry. Someone was stealing from me, undermining my authority. I wanted blood. He looked at Mara. I wanted easy answers. We all do, she said. That's not an excuse. No, it's not. Mara met his eyes. But it's human. They drove through Brooklyn's industrial zones, past warehouses that held Amazon packages instead of mob money, past developments that used to be docks. The city was always eating itself, rebuilding, forgetting. But some things didn't forget. The Chase Vault was downtown, buried under 50 floors of glass and steel. Victor's connections got them past the first security checkpoint. His name, his father's name, got them through the second. The vault manager was professional, efficient, asked just enough questions to maintain plausible deniability. Box 439 was registered to Lucia Salvatore Vance, inactive since 1987, flagged for eventual escapement to the state. They signed forms, showed identification, Mara's and documents proving her relationship to Lucia. The manager didn't ask why they wanted access to a box that hadn't been opened in 38 years. Money, Mara was learning, bought a lot of silence. The viewing room was small, private, sterile. The manager brought the box, set it on the table, left without a word. Mara inserted the key. The mechanism turned smooth despite the decades. Inside, a leather journal. Hand-stitched, weather-worn. Pages filled with her father's handwriting, numbers, dates, notations in Italian and English both. And underneath, wrapped in plastic, a cassette tape. Victor pulled out his phone, photographed every page of the journal. The numbers told a story if you knew how to read them. Money flowing in, money flowing out, legitimate construction costs, and then, separate, marked in red, phantom expenses, payments to companies that didn't exist, contracts with vendors who had no addresses, millions vanishing into accounts that had been created and destroyed within weeks. "This is brilliant," Victor breathed. He documented everything, every discrepancy, every false invoice. And look, he pointed to a series of entries marked with asterisks. These payments all have Gallo's signature, approval codes that only he had access to. The Don held the cassette tape like it might explode. "We need to hear this." "Who uses cassettes anymore, Mom?" Mara said. "Old men who don't trust digital." The Don's smile was grim. Domenico was old-fashioned, trusted paper and magnetic tape, said computers could be hacked, but physics was honest. They left the bank with the journal and tape. The key returned to the emptied box. Outside, the city rushed past in its perpetual hurry, everyone chasing something, running from something else. Mara felt the weight of what they'd found. Proof. Finally. The kind of evidence that couldn't be explained away. But proof required action, and action in this world meant blood. The address from the mysterious text burned in her mind. Red Hook, the place her father had died. She looked at Victor, at the Don, at the men who'd pulled her into this world. "I need to go somewhere," she said, alone. "Absolutely not," Victor started. "It's not a request." Mara's voice was firm. "Someone's been helping us. Someone who knew my father. I need to meet them." "It could be a trap," the Don said. "Everything's a trap." Mara pulled out her phone, showed them the address. "But traps can be triggered from both ends, and I'm tired of waiting for Gallo to make the first move." The argument lasted 20 minutes, conducted in the back of the Mercedes, while Manhattan traffic crawled past like a funeral procession. "You don't walk into Red Hook alone," Victor said for the third time. "Not with Russo potentially contracted, not with Gallo knowing we're digging." "Then follow me at a distance," Mara shot back. "But I'm going. Whoever sent those texts has been helping us. They knew about the safety deposit box. They knew about my grandmother." The Don had been silent, watching her with those ancient eyes. Finally, he spoke. "She's right." "Father?" "She's right," the Don repeated. "Whoever this is has had 38 years to come forward. They waited for her, for Domenico's daughter." He leaned forward, the leather seat creaking. "But Victor's also right. You don't go alone. Carlo drives you. Luca and Stefano follow in a second car. You meet this person, you listen, and if anything feels wrong, anything, you leave. Capisce?" Mara nodded. The compromise tasted like ash, but she'd take it. Red Hook in the afternoon looked like urban decay dressed up for company. Old warehouses converted to artist lofts, coffee shops next to auto body shops. The kind of neighborhood caught between what it was and what developers wanted it to become. The water glinted beyond chain-link fences, the Statue of Liberty distant and green against the sky. The address was a marine supply warehouse on Van Brunt Street. The building had seen better decades, cracked concrete, faded paint, windows covered in grime that might have been older than Mara. A sign reading Moretti Marine Supply hung crooked above the entrance. Moretti. The name from her grandmother's photograph. Carlo pulled to the curb 3 buildings down. "I don't like this." "Nobody likes this," Mara said. "That's how you know it's important." She got out before he could argue further. Behind them, Luca and Stefano's car idled, dark windows concealing whatever arsenal they'd brought. The warehouse door was unlocked. It opened with a metal shriek that probably announced her presence to everyone within 3 blocks. Inside, the space was cavernous, shadowed. Boat parts hung from chains, shelves held coils of rope and rusted equipment. The place smelled like motor oil and salt water and abandonment. "Hello?" Mara's voice echoed. Movement in the back. A figure emerging from behind a stack of crates backlit by a grimy window. "Mara Vance." Not a question. The voice was male, older, rough. "You look like him. More every year, I'd bet." The figure stepped into better light. A man in his 70s, gray-haired, wearing coveralls that had been blue once. His face was weathered, lined, the kind of damage that came from decades of hard work and harder memories. One hand rested on a cane. "Who are you?" Mara asked. "Name's Sal Moretti, though I doubt that means anything to you." He gestured to a couple of overturned crates. Sit. We got talking to do, and I'm too old to stand through long stories. Mara sat but kept her distance, kept the exit in her peripheral vision. You sent the texts. Guilty. Sal eased himself onto a crate with a grunt. Been watching you since you walked into Azzurro 3 years ago. Took me a while to be sure. Lucia hid you good. Changed her name, your name, buried herself in Queens. But I knew someday you'd surface. Had to. This life doesn't let go easy. You knew my father. Knew him? Sal's laugh was bitter. I worked with him. Domenico Milano was my partner. We ran construction for the Rinaldi family. Built half of Brooklyn together. He paused, something dark crossing his face. And I was there the night Gallo killed him. The warehouse seemed to hold its breath. You witnessed it, Mara said slowly. Witnessed it. Helped dig the grave. Sal's voice went flat, reciting facts. March 15th, 1987. Warehouse 2 blocks from here, long since torn down. Gallo brought him in, hands tied. Said the Don had ordered it. Execution for betrayal. Domenico kept saying it was a lie, that he had proof, that Gallo was the thief. But we'd all seen the evidence, the bank accounts, the documents. And we were soldiers. We followed orders. You killed him, Mara's voice was ice. I held him while Gallo put the gun to his head. No excuses, no justifications, just truth, ugly and old. He looked at me. Your father. Last thing he said was, tell Lucia the books are safe. Tell her I'm sorry. Then Gallo pulled the trigger. Mara's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs, forced them still. Why should I believe you? Why should I believe anything you say? Sal reached into his coveralls, pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Because I've been carrying this for 38 years, waiting for someone who'd know what to do with it. He unwrapped the cloth. Inside a cassette tape, identical to the one from the safety deposit box. Domenico made 2 copies, Sal said. One he gave to Lucia before it happened. The other he gave to me, 3 days earlier. Said if anything happened to him, I should listen to it, should know the truth. He set the tape on the crate between them. I listened, and I've been living with what I heard every day since. What's on it? A conversation. Recorded in this very warehouse, March 1st, 1987. Domenico hid a voice-activated recorder in the office upstairs. Caught Gallo and a man named Vincent Calabrese planning the whole thing. How they'd frame Domenico. How they'd split the money Gallo had been skimming. How they'd use the Rinaldi family's muscle to eliminate the Calabrese competition, then let the Calabrese move into the power vacuum. Sal's jaw tightened. It was all theater. Gallo and Calabrese were partners. Still are, probably. And we were all puppets. Mara stared at the tape. Why didn't you come forward? Why didn't you tell the Don? Because I'm a coward. The admission came easy, practiced. Because Gallo told us Domenico had partners, that more traitors might surface. Anyone who defended him would look suspicious, so we all stayed quiet, kept our heads down, survived. He met her eyes. Your grandmother knew I had this tape, came to me before she disappeared, said someday her granddaughter would need it, made me promise I'd wait, that I'd stay alive long enough to hand it over. 38 years is a long time to carry a promise. It's longer when you're carrying guilt. Sal stood, the cane supporting his weight. I can't fix what I did. Can't bring him back. But I can give you this. Give you justice if you know what to do with it. Mara took the tape. It was warm from being against Sal's body. Warm with decades of waiting. The Don will want to talk to you, she said. I know. I'm ready. Sal's expression was resignation mixed with relief. Been ready for years. Waiting's worse than whatever comes after. Outside, a car engine gunned. Loud, aggressive, wrong. Mara turned toward the door just as it exploded inward. 3 men, moving fast, hands emerging from jackets with guns that looked military grade. Carlo was shouting something, but the warehouse acoustics turned it into echo and chaos. Sal moved faster than a 70-year-old man should move, grabbed Mara's arm, yanked her behind the crates. Back exit! Through the... The first gunshot cut him off. The sound was massive in the enclosed space. Wrong, like the world breaking. Something hit the crate beside Mara's head, sent splinters flying. She ran. Sal was ahead of her, surprisingly fast, leading her through the maze of equipment and shadows. Behind them, more gunshots. Carlo's voice, sharp commands in Italian, the boom of a different gun, deeper. Luca or Stefano returning fire. Here! Sal hit a door with his shoulder, and it gave way to an alley stinking of rot and harbor water. They stumbled out into gray afternoon light. A black SUV screeched around the corner, blocking the alley's far end. Dante Russo stepped out, and Mara knew his face without ever having seen it. The kind of face that belonged to men who killed for money and slept fine afterward. "Mara Vance," Russo said. His voice was conversational, almost friendly. "You've been causing problems. Mr. Gallo sends his regards." Sal stepped in front of her. "Russo, you're making a mistake." "Probably." Russo raised his gun, professional, efficient. "But I'm being paid well for it." The shot that followed didn't come from Russo's gun. It came from above, from a rooftop across the alley. The bullet hit Russo's shoulder, spun him around. His gun clattered to the pavement. Victor's voice, amplified somehow. "Don Rinaldi sends his regards too, and his are more permanent." The SUV's driver panicked, threw the vehicle into reverse, tires screaming. Russo scrambled after it, blood streaming from his shoulder, his professional calm shattered. Victor appeared in the Sally's mouth, flanked by two men Mara didn't recognize. His suit was immaculate. His expression was ice. "You all right?" He didn't wait for an answer, already moving past her toward the warehouse. "Carlo?" "Alive." Carlo emerged, blood on his sleeve but walking. Two down inside, one got away. Luca and Stefano dragged bodies out, not bothering with gentleness. Mara forced herself to look. Both men were young, maybe 30, with the kind of tattoos that told stories about prisons and allegiances. Neither one she recognized. "Gallo's crew?" Victor asked. "Independent contractors." Luca kicked one of the bodies. "This one's got a cell phone, might have something useful." Sal was leaning against the alley wall, breathing hard. "Christ, I'm too old for this." Victor finally looked at him, really looked. "Sal Moretti. Been a while." "Victor Rinaldi. You were a kid last time I saw you." Sal straightened, trying for dignity. "Your father's going to want me dead too, I assume." "Depends on what you tell him." Victor's gaze dropped to the tape in Mara's hand. "What's that?" Mara handed it over. "Insurance, the kind that ends empires." Sirens in the distance, getting closer. This neighborhood wasn't Red Hook from the 80s, wasn't a place where gunfire got ignored. "We need to move," Carlo said. "Now." The ride back to Sutton Place was silent, except for the engine and Sal's labored breathing. He sat in the back between Mara and Victor, hands shaking slightly, the reality of what had just happened settling in. Luca drove, Stefano beside him, both men checking mirrors constantly. The two bodies were in the other car, headed somewhere they'd never be found. The NYPD would investigate, find nothing, file it under unsolved. That's how it worked when the right people made phone calls. At the townhouse, the Don was waiting in his study. This room was different from the sitting room, darker, more private. The walls were lined with leather-bound books that probably hadn't been opened in decades, and photographs in expensive frames. The Don's history in sepia and black and white. Sal walked in like a man going to his execution. "Don Rinaldi," he said. No handshake, no familiarity. Formality as protection. The Don studied him from behind a desk that looked carved from a single piece of mahogany. "Salvatore Moretti. I heard you'd retired from the business. Went legitimate. Marine supply, mostly to fishing boats and tourists who don't know better." Sal remained standing. "I know why I'm here." "Do you?" The Don's voice gave nothing away. "I helped kill Domenico Milano. I've known he was innocent for 38 years and said nothing. Whatever punishment..." "Sit down, Sal." The Don's voice wasn't angry. It was tired. "I've killed enough old men this week. Let's hear what you have to say before I decide if you'll be another." Sal sat. Mara stood by the window, watching the street below. Victor had disappeared, taking the cassette tape with him. She knew where. The basement, where they had equipment that could play obsolete formats. "Start at the beginning," the Don said. "And don't lie to me. I've gotten very good at spotting lies." Sal talked. He told it chronologically, factually, the kind of recitation that came from years of mentally rehearsing. How Gallo had seemed agitated in early 1987, How he'd started asking questions about Domenico's habits, his routines, his contacts, how the evidence had appeared suddenly, completely, convincingly. The execution order that came from the Don himself, the warehouse, the last words. The tape Domenico had prepared had trusted Sal to protect. "Why you?" the Don interrupted. "Why did Domenico give you the tape?" "Because I owed him. 2 years earlier, my son got involved with drugs. Domenico covered for him, kept it quiet, got him into a program. Saved his life. Probably saved mine, too. He said someday he might need a favor back." Sal's voice cracked. "I failed him. I held him while he died, and I've been failing him every day since." The Don's expression was unreadable. "Your son, he's the one running the marine supply now?" "He is. Clean for 36 years. Married, grandkids, the whole thing." Sal looked directly at the Don. "Whatever you do to me, leave him out of it. He doesn't know anything about this world." "Everyone in this city knows something about this world," the Don said. "But I'm not in the business of punishing children for their father's cowardice." He stood, walked to a cabinet, poured 2 glasses of something amber, handed one to Sal. "Drink." Sal drank. His hand trembled, liquid sloshing. "I should kill you," the Don said conversationally. "You participated in the murder of an innocent man. You let me live with that guilt. Let me trust a traitor for nearly 4 decades. Yes. But you also protected evidence that can destroy that traitor. You waited for Domenico's daughter. You tried to make it right." The Don sipped his drink. "That doesn't balance the scales, but it tilts them." Victor returned, holding a laptop and a small device that probably cost more than Mara's car. "The tape's been digitized. Audio quality's decent, considering its age. You need to hear this." He set up speakers, adjusted levels. The Don sat back down, the weight of the moment visible in his posture. The recording started with static, then voices emerging like ghosts. The first voice was unfamiliar, younger, cold. "Got the account set up. 6 months of transactions, backdated properly. Numbers match the skim pattern Milano's been tracking." Gallo's voice, unmistakable even decades younger. "He's smart. He'll spot inconsistencies." "Not if he's dead." The other voice, Vincent Calabrese, Mara guessed, laughed. "You bring him the evidence, let Don Rinaldi do the work. Milano gets executed, the money stays hidden, and we continue our arrangement. The Rinaldi family eliminates my father's old guard, I take over, and we run both organizations from behind the scenes. It's risky. Everything's risky. But Alessio trusts you completely. He'll believe whatever you tell him." There was a pause, the sound of liquid being poured. Glasses clinking. "To partnership," Gallo's voice said, "and to useful idiots who do our killing for us." "To Domenico Milano," Calabrese added. "May his death be profitable." The tape continued. Logistical details about money transfers, about which officials to bribe, about the long game they were playing. 10 minutes of conspiracy, preserved on magnetic tape, damning and absolute. When it ended, the silence in the study was total. The Don's hands were flat on his desk, pressed so hard his knuckles had gone white. His face was stone, but Mara saw the fury underneath, the kind of rage that burned cold, that calculated instead of exploded. 38 years, he said finally. 38 years I've built businesses with this man, shared meals, trusted him with my life, and all of it, every moment, was a lie. "Father," Victor started, "get me Antonio Gallo." The Don's voice was steel wrapped in ice. "Tell him I want to meet. Tonight. Tell him we have new information about the Moretti contract." He looked at Sal. "You'll be there. You'll tell him what you told me." "He'll know it's a trap," Victor said. "Of course he'll know. But he'll come anyway." The Don smiled, and it was terrible. Because Antonio's spent 38 years believing he's smarter than everyone else, that he's untouchable. We're going to show him how wrong he is. Mara stepped forward. "What about Russo? He's still out there." "Russo's a mercenary. Without Gallo's money, he's just another hired gun." The Don waved dismissively. "Luca and Stefano will handle him, quietly, professionally. By tomorrow morning, Dante Russo will be a problem solved." "And the Calabrese family?" Mara asked. "If Vincent's still alive, still in power." "Vincent Calabrese died 6 years ago," Victor said. "Heart attack. His son runs things now. Tony Calabrese. Different generation, different approach. More businessman than gangster. Then we bring him the tape too, the Don said. Show him what his father and Gallo did. Let him decide if he wants to continue the partnership or end it. The plan was forming, pieces moving into place. Mara could see it taking shape. The trap, the confrontation, the reckoning, 38 years delayed. Where's the meat? She asked. The Don looked at her. This isn't your fight anymore. You've done enough. Like hell, Mara's voice was sharp. That tape exists because my father died protecting it, because my grandmother spent 15 years preparing me for this moment without telling me what she was doing. I've earned the right to see this through. She's right, Sal said quietly. Domenico would want his daughter there. The Don considered, ancient eyes measuring. Finally, he nodded. Azzurro, where this started. Tomorrow night, after closing. Neutral ground, public enough to keep things civilized. You think Gallo will come alone? Victor asked. No, but neither will we. The Don stood, the decision made. Make the calls, set it up. And Victor, I want the ledger, the tape, everything we found laid out, evidence that can't be denied. Victor left to make arrangements. Sal remained seated, looking exhausted. You can stay here tonight, the Don said to him. Carlo will set you up in one of the guest rooms. Tomorrow, you'll stand with us. You'll face what you did. Understand? I understand. After Sal left, Mara remained. The Don poured himself another drink, didn't offer her one. You remind me of him, he said. Not just the looks, the way you move through the world. Domenico had this quality. He could be invisible when he wanted, then step forward when it mattered. You have the same gift. I learned it from necessity. The best skills usually are. The Don sat heavily. I've been thinking about what happens after tomorrow, assuming we survive it. We will. Confidence, also like your father. The Don smiled slightly. But assuming we do, you have a choice to make. You can walk away, take money, enough to start fresh anywhere. I owe you that much for what was done to your family. Or you can stay, really stay, become part of this family, not just in blood but in practice. Learn the business, the legitimate side. Work with Victor. Help us build something that doesn't require basements full of secrets. He met her eyes. Domenico was going to be my successor, eventually. He had the mind for it, the temperament. Maybe his daughter has the same gifts. Mara felt the weight of the offer. The door closing on one life, another opening. I don't know, she said honestly. I spent years being invisible, being safe. This week has been chaos, terror, violence. The Don nodded. That's this world, but it's also purpose, legacy, power used properly. Your father understood that. He wanted to make the family legitimate, to wash the blood off the money. That's why Gallo killed him. Domenico was too ethical for a partnership built on lies. I'm not my father. No, you're your grandmother's granddaughter. And Lucia Salvatore was the strongest person I ever met. She walked away from everything to protect you. That's strength most men don't have. The Don finished his drink. Think about it, but not too long. Tomorrow changes everything, one way or another. That night, Mara couldn't sleep again. She stood in her borrowed room, watching the city's lights, and thought about choices. About the woman she'd been a week ago. Invisible, safe, small. About the woman she was becoming. Visible, dangerous, stepping into a legacy she'd never asked for. Her phone buzzed. Text from Victor. Can't sleep either. Roof access through the 4th floor. Bring a jacket. She found him on the townhouse's roof deck, a space that probably violated a dozen building codes, but offered a view of Manhattan that made the violations worthwhile. The city sprawled below them, millions of lives intersecting, each one carrying its own secrets. Victor handed her a beer. Figured whiskey was overkill. They drank in silence, the night air cold enough to remind them they were alive. Are you scared? Mara asked. About tomorrow? Terrified. Victor's honesty was surprising. My father's playing a dangerous game. Gallo's desperate. And desperate men make mistakes. Violent ones. Then why do it this way? Why not just... She made a vague gesture. Handle it quietly? Because my father needs the confrontation. Needs to look Gallo in the eye, show him the evidence, see him break. Victor turned the beer bottle in his hands. 38 years of guilt, of wondering if he'd killed an innocent man. This isn't just about justice, it's about absolution. And you? What's it about for you? Victor was quiet for a long moment. Proving I'm not my father, that I can build something that doesn't require executions and betrayals, that the Rinaldi name can mean something other than fear. He looked at her. Your father was going to help him do that, make us legitimate. Now maybe his daughter can finish what he started. I haven't decided yet. I know, but when you do, Victor's voice was careful. Choose for yourself. Not for your father's memory, not for your grandmother's sacrifice. For you. They stayed on the roof until the cold drove them inside, until exhaustion finally outweighed anxiety. Mara fell asleep thinking about choices, about legacies, about the difference between running from the past and running toward the future. Morning came with Carlo knocking, coffee already prepared, the machine of the day already in motion. The Don was in his study, on the phone, speaking rapid Italian, arrangements being made, pieces being moved. Sal appeared at breakfast looking like he'd slept even less than Mara. His hands shook slightly as he poured coffee. How long has Gallo known? He asked. About me. About the warehouse. Probably since we found the first tape, Victor said. He's got sources everywhere, ears in places we haven't even thought to check. So yesterday was him trying to tie up loose ends. And failing, Victor's smile was sharp, which means he's rattled, making mistakes. That's when men like him are most dangerous. The day crawled past. Mara tried to eat, couldn't. Tried to read, couldn't focus. Tried to prepare for whatever tonight would bring. Realized there was no preparation for this. At 4, Luca arrived with news. Russo's gone, disappeared, left the city probably. His crew's scattered. Gallo cut him loose, the Don said, probably after yesterday's failure. Antonio's cleaning house. And the meet? Victor asked. Confirmed. 8 o'clock. Azzurro. After closing. Gallo's bringing 2 men. We'll bring 3. The Don looked at Mara, at Sal. Plus our witnesses. The hours before 8 stretched and compressed simultaneously. Mara changed clothes 3 times, settled on black, practical, anonymous. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. A week ago, she'd been furniture. Now she was evidence, a weapon, a ghost made flesh. At 7:30, they loaded into 2 cars, the Don, Victor, and Mara in the Mercedes. Luca, Stefano, and Sal in the follow car. Carlo drove with the careful precision of a man who'd done this before, who knew the weight of the cargo he carried. Azzurro was dark when they arrived, the dining room emptied of its usual elegance. The tables were bare, the chandeliers dimmed. Marco, the floor manager, waited by the door. Don Rinaldi, he said. His nervousness was palpable. Everything is prepared as you requested. They entered through the kitchen, the space where Mara had spent 3 years being invisible. The cook's stations were clean, empty. The walk-in freezer hummed, everything familiar and foreign at once. The private dining room in the back, the one reserved for VIPs, for deals that required discretion, had been set up with a single table, 6 chairs, a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Mara's monthly rent when she'd worked here. The Don took the head of the table, Victor to his right, Mara to his left. Sal, Luca, and Stefano stood against the wall, present but not seated. The hierarchy on display. At 7:58, the back door opened. Antonio Gallo entered like he owned the place, which, technically, he partially did. 2 men flanked him, muscle, professional, eyes constantly moving. They took positions opposite Luca and Stefano, the room suddenly full of barely contained violence. Gallo saw Mara and went still. Just for a second, a micro-expression of surprise before his control reasserted. Then his gaze moved to Sal, and something else flickered across his face. Calculation, understanding, fear buried deep but present. Alessio, Gallo said, smooth as ever. A late dinner, you should have said. I'd have brought something better than these 2. He gestured dismissively at his bodyguards. Sit, Antonio. The Don's voice was neutral. We have things to discuss. Gallo sat, still playing casual, still pretending this was routine. The Moretti contract, you said? I thought that was settled. Not that Moretti. The Don gestured to Sal. This one. Gallo's eyes went to Sal, and Mara saw the recognition, the understanding that whatever play he'd thought this was had just changed games entirely. Sal Moretti, Gallo said carefully. Been a long time. Not long enough, Sal replied. The Don poured wine, the ritual precise. Antonio, you and I have known each other for over 40 years. We've built businesses, made fortunes, buried enemies and friends both. I've trusted you with my life more times than I can count. And I've never betrayed that trust, Gallo said, but his voice had changed, tension creeping in. No? The Don slid a folder across the table. Then perhaps you can explain these. Gallo opened the folder. Mara watched his face as he saw the ledger copies, the bank records, the evidence of his theft spanning decades. Watched the mask slip just for a moment before he forced it back into place. I don't understand, Gallo said. These documents, they're forgeries. Someone's trying to… Domenico Milano kept excellent records, the Don interrupted. Detailed, accurate, the kind of records an honest man keeps when he suspects he's working with a thief. Gallo's hands tightened on the folder. Domenico was a traitor. We established that in 1987. You established that? The Don's voice went cold. You brought me evidence. You convinced me to execute an innocent man, and I believed you because you were my friend, my trusted advisor, my right hand. Alessio, I don't know what you've been told, but… Victor placed a laptop on the table, pressed play. Gallo's voice filled the room, 38 years younger, but unmistakable. To partnership, and to useful idiots who do our killing for us. The color drained from Gallo's face. The recording played in its entirety. 10 minutes of conspiracy, of betrayal, of two men planning to use the Rinaldi family as a weapon against itself. When it ended, the silence was absolute. Gallo's hands were shaking now, the careful control shattered. Where did you get that? Domenico recorded you, Sal said from the wall. Made 2 copies. Gave one to Lucia. Gave one to me. Told me that if anything happened to him, the truth would need to survive. Gallo's eyes went to Sal, and the hatred there was pure. You've been sitting on this for 38 years, Sal finished, waiting, like Lucia asked, for Domenico's daughter to come home. Gallo looked at Mara, really looked, saw her father in her features, saw the ghost he'd tried to bury. This is… Gallo started, but whatever lie he'd been constructing collapsed. The weight of the evidence, the recording, the witnesses, it was too much. The facade crumbled. I did what I had to do, he said finally. Raw honesty replacing smooth deception. This family was stagnating under your cautious leadership, Alessio. Domenico wanted to go legitimate, to wash our hands of the real money. The Calabrese partnership offered opportunity, real growth, power. Built on my soldiers' blood, the Don said. On my name, on my guilt for killing an innocent man. Domenico was weak. He would have destroyed everything we built. Gallo leaned forward, desperate now. I protected this family. I made us rich. Everything we have. The developments, the political connections, the legitimate businesses, I built that. Domenico's death was necessary. The Don stood slowly, his cane supporting weight that seemed to have doubled. You're right about one thing. You did build our legitimate empire, and I'm going to tear it down piece by piece until there's nothing left with your name on it. Gallo's hand moved toward his jacket. Luca and Stefano had guns out before Gallo's fingers touched fabric. His bodyguards moved too, but Victor already had a weapon trained on them. Don't, Victor said, calm, professional. You're outgunned and out of options. Gallo's hand froze. The moment stretched, violence hovering like a held breath. I should kill you here, the Don said, the way you killed Domenico. Quick, professional, final. Then do it, Gallo spat. Get it over with. No. The Don's voice was steel. You're going to walk out of here. You're going to disappear. Leave the city. Leave the country if you're smart. Because if I see you again, If I even hear your name, I'll finish this properly. Gallo stared. You're letting me go. I'm giving you what you never gave Domenico. A chance. The Don leaned on his cane, suddenly looking every one of his 73 years. But make no mistake, your businesses, your money, your connections, all of it belongs to me now. The only thing you walk away with is your life, and that's a gift you don't deserve. The calculation was visible in Gallo's eyes. Run or fight. Pride or survival. Survival won. He stood, slowly, his bodyguards backing toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back. You're making a mistake, he said, letting me live. Probably, the Don agreed. But I've made so many mistakes already. One more won't matter. Gallo left. His footsteps echoed through Azuro's empty dining room, fading into the Manhattan night. When the door closed, Mara realized she'd been holding her breath. She exhaled, and it felt like releasing years of pressure. It's done, the Don said, but he didn't sound relieved. He sounded tired. Old. Salvatore, you're free to go. What you did tonight, testifying, facing this, it doesn't erase the past, but it balances the debt. Sal nodded, said nothing. Words wouldn't have helped anyway. After everyone else left, only Mara, Victor, and the Don remained in the empty restaurant. The scene of the crime. The place where a waitress had spoken an old language and shattered 15 years of invisibility. What happens now? Mara asked. Now, the Don said, we rebuild. We take Gallo's empire apart legally, properly. We honor what Domenico wanted, a family that doesn't require secrets and basement executions. He looked at her. And you decide what role you want in that future, if any. Mara looked around Azuro. At the tables where she'd been furniture, at the corner booth where everything had started. I need time, she said, to think, to figure out who I am beyond all of this. Take all the time you need, the Don said. But remember, you're family now. That doesn't change, no matter what you decide. They walked out into the night, into a city that had witnessed everything and remembered nothing. Tomorrow, Azuro would open for lunch service. Customers would eat expensive food and never know that in this very room, a 38-year conspiracy had unraveled. That's how Manhattan worked. History happened in layers, invisible to everyone not paying attention. Mara paid attention now, and she would never be invisible again. 3 days passed like smoke, present, visible, then gone. Mara stayed in the townhouse because leaving felt like admitting defeat, and staying felt like accepting something she wasn't ready to name. The guest room had become a cell she'd locked herself into, comfortable and suffocating in equal measure. Victor knocked at 9 in the morning on the 4th day. You can't hide forever. Watch me. He opened the door anyway, came in carrying coffee and a newspaper. Page 6, bottom left. Trisham, the headline read, Prominent real estate developer Antonio Gallo relocates to Switzerland. The article was 3 paragraphs of corporate speak about new opportunities, expanded markets, blah, blah, blah. Code for man runs before consequences catch him. Switzerland, Mara said. Nice and neutral. And beyond my father's immediate reach. Victor sat in the chair by the window, the one Mara had spent 3 nights staring out of. Though I've already made some calls, Swiss banks are cooperative when the right pressure gets applied. Gallo's accounts are being frozen. His assets here are in legal limbo. By next month, he'll be broke and exiled. Your father said he'd let him go. He did let him go. Alive. He never said anything about letting him keep his money. Victor sipped his coffee. There's a difference between mercy and stupidity. Mara turned the newspaper over, not wanting to see Gallo's photograph anymore. The man looked smaller in print, less threatening. Just another rich guy in a suit. Just another story that would be forgotten by tomorrow's news cycle. Luca found something yesterday, Victor said. Going through Gallo's office files. Correspondences between him and Vincent Calabrese going back to 1985. 38 years of partnership, documented in letters and emails. Everything from money laundering to contract kills. It's a prosecutor's dream. You're turning it over to the authorities? Some of it, the parts that don't implicate us. Victor's smile was sharp. The Rinaldi family might be going legitimate, but we're not suicidal. We're giving them enough to dismantle what's left of the Calabrese organization, clean up some old messes. Win-win. That's not justice. That's strategy. In this world, they're the same thing. Victor set down his coffee. My father wants to see you, downstairs. He has something for you. The Don was in the sitting room, surrounded by banker's boxes that hadn't been there yesterday. He looked older in the morning light, the shadows under his eyes deeper, but his spine was straight, his hands steady on the cane. Mara, sit. He gestured to the boxes. These are your father's, Domenico's personal effects. What little we recovered after his death. I should have given them to Lucia, but she'd already disappeared. So they've been in my basement for 38 years, waiting. Mara sat slowly, her gaze on the boxes. Her father's life, reduced to cardboard and dust. I went through them last night, the Don continued. Found things I'd forgotten. Letters he wrote but never sent. Photographs. A journal. He was planning to propose to your grandmother. Had a ring picked out, had saved money, had written his vows. The Don's voice roughened. He was going to leave the business, go legitimate, marry Lucia, and start fresh. But Gallo killed him first. The Don touched one of the boxes like it might burn him. I robbed him of that future. Robbed you of a father. Robbed Lucia of a life. And I can't fix it. Can't bring him back. Can't undo 38 years of waste. Mara didn't know what to say. Comfort felt wrong. Anger felt useless. So she said nothing. Let the silence do the work words couldn't. There's something else. The Don pulled a folder from inside his jacket. Domenico's will. He wrote it 2 weeks before he died. Left everything to Lucia. And to his unborn child, if Lucia was pregnant. Which she was, though he didn't know for certain yet. He handed the folder to Mara. Inside, legal documents yellowed with age. Asset lists, bank accounts, properties. Numbers that seemed impossible. He was worth $3 million in 1987, the Don said. Invested wisely, saved carefully. That money's been sitting in trust, accruing interest, waiting for an heir. He met her eyes. With compound interest over 38 years, it's worth approximately $18 million now. It's yours. No strings, no obligations. Whether you stay or walk away. Whether you want anything to do with this family or not, it's yours. $18 million. The number was abstract, meaningless. Mara had worked for $8 an hour plus tips, had scraped together rent money, had eaten ramen more nights than she could count. 18 million was a different language. I don't want it, she said. Tough. The Don's voice was firm. It's not about want. It's about what you're owed. Domenico earned that money. He wanted it to go to his family. You're his family. End of discussion. Victor appeared in the doorway. Tony Calabrese is here. The Don's expression hardened. Show him in, but keep Luca and Stefano close. Tony Calabrese was younger than Mara expected. 40, maybe 45, with the kind of tan that came from golf courses and yacht decks. He wore his suit like costume, like he was playing the role of crime boss without fully committing. Behind him stood a single bodyguard, older, more dangerous looking. Don Rinaldi, Tony said. Respectful, but not subservient. Thank you for seeing me. Tony, you've met my son Victor. The Don gestured. And this is Mara Vance, Domenico Milano's daughter. Tony's eyes flickered with recognition. I heard the name Milano. Heard my father and Gallo had him killed. Heard wrong reasons were given. He looked directly at Mara. My father was a paranoid bastard who saw enemies everywhere. If he partnered with Gallo to eliminate yours, I apologize for what that's worth. It's worth nothing, Mara said. Apologies don't resurrect the dead. No, they don't. Tony's jaw tightened. But maybe actions do. I listened to the recording your people sent. My father and Gallo planning their empire, using both our families like chess pieces. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is every asset my father acquired through the partnership. Properties, accounts, businesses. I'm signing them over to you, to the Rinaldi family. Reparations. The Don took the envelope, didn't open it. Why? Because I'm not my father. Because I don't want an empire built on lies. Tony's voice was steady. The Calabrese family is going legitimate. Real estate, construction, all above board. I've got lawyers cleaning up the old business, getting us out of anything that smells wrong. This is me cutting the last tie to the past. Noble, Victor said. His tone suggested he didn't believe a word. Practical, Tony corrected. My father's generation fought wars in the streets, left bodies, made headlines. That's not sustainable anymore. The real money's in legitimate business. You know that. Your transition's been underway for years. The Don studied him, ancient eyes measuring. And if I refuse your reparations? If I decide the Calabrese family still owes blood? Then we have a problem. Tony didn't flinch. But I don't think you want war any more than I do. War's expensive. War draws attention. War's bad for business on both sides. The calculation was visible in the Don's expression. Practicality versus revenge. The old way versus the new. We'll accept your reparations, the Don said finally. And we'll consider the debt settled. But Tony, if I ever find out you're continuing your father's games, playing both sides, lying to my face, there won't be negotiations. There'll just be consequences. Understood. Tony extended his hand. The Don shook it, the gesture formal and binding in ways that didn't require lawyers. After Tony left, Victor opened the envelope, scanned the contents. His eyebrows rose. This is substantial. 12 properties in Brooklyn and Queens, 4 offshore accounts, controlling interest in 3 construction companies. He looked at his father. He's actually serious about going clean. Or he's smart enough to know when he's beat. The Don turned to Mara. Half of this is yours. Domenico would want you compensated properly. I don't want but. I know you don't want the money, you don't want the properties, you don't want any of this. The Don's voice was patient. But want doesn't matter. This is your inheritance. Your father died for it. Your grandmother sacrificed everything to protect you from it. And now it's yours to do with as you please. Burn it, give it away, build something with it. I don't care. But you're taking it. Mara felt the weight of legacy pressing down. Money she hadn't earned, power she hadn't sought, responsibility she'd never asked for. The invisible girl from Jackson Heights was buried under it, suffocating. I need air, she said, standing abruptly. I need to think. She walked out before anyone could argue, out through the townhouse's front door, past Carlo's concerned expression, into the Manhattan afternoon that didn't care about her crisis. The city moved around her with indifferent efficiency. Tourists photographing buildings, professionals rushing between meetings, street vendors selling pretzels and hot dogs and knockoff bags. Life, continuing, oblivious to the fact that Mara's entire existence had been turned inside out in a week. She walked without destination, letting her feet choose the path. Ended up in Central Park somehow, sitting on a bench near the reservoir, watching joggers loop past in their expensive gear and wireless headphones. Her phone buzzed. Text from a number she didn't recognize. Saw the news about Gallo. Your father would be proud. She typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. Someone who knew Domenico. Someone who's been watching out for you. The money's clean. The properties are legitimate. Your grandmother made me promise to verify everything before you took possession. Promise kept. What do you want? Nothing. Just wanted you to know you're not alone in this. You've got people, family beyond the Rinaldis. Your father built a network of good people. We're still here. The messages stopped. Mara stared at her phone, at the mysterious ally her father had apparently left behind. Another ghost made manifest. Another piece of a puzzle she hadn't known existed. A jogger ran past, stumbled, caught herself, kept running. The world continued. Mara walked back to Sutton Place as the sun started setting, painting the city in oranges and purples that almost looked beautiful if you ignored the garbage and the car exhaust and the 1,000 small cruelties happening beneath the aesthetic. Victor was waiting on the front steps, tie loosened, jacket discarded. You've been gone 4 hours. My father was about to send search parties. I went for a walk. For 4 hours. In Manhattan. Alone. Victor stood. You know Russo's still out there somewhere. You know Gallo might have friends who haven't gotten the message. I was fine. You were reckless. His voice was sharp. You want to reject the family, reject the money, reject everything? Fine. But don't get yourself killed out of spite. It's not spite. Mara sat on the steps beside him. It's confusion. I don't know who I am anymore. A week ago, I was a waitress. Now I'm an heiress with $18 million and a crime family offering me a future. How do you process that? Victor was quiet for a moment. You don't. Not all at once. You take it piece by piece. You make small decisions that lead to bigger ones. You figure out what you actually want instead of what you think you should want. And what do I want? That's not my question to answer. Victor pulled out his phone, showed her something. A photograph of a building, old brick, 4 stories, wide windows. But this might help you decide. It's one of the properties Tony signed over. Used to be a garment factory. Your grandmother worked there in the 80s, actually. It's been empty for years, but the bones are good. Location's perfect. Could be anything. Mara studied the image. Why are you showing me this? Because my father's not the only one with plans for you. If Victor's smile was slight. I've been thinking about what Domenico wanted. A legitimate empire. Clean money. Something that actually helps people instead of just extracting from them. He pocketed the phone. That building could be a community center, job training, ESL classes, the kind of thing that actually changes neighborhoods instead of just gentrifying them. And you could run it. I don't know anything about running community centers. You know what it's like to be invisible, to work shit jobs for shit money, to need help and not know where to find it. Victor met her eyes. That's more qualification than most people running these things have. The rest you can learn, or hire people who already know. The idea took shape slowly, fragile as new glass, purpose without bloodshed, legacy without violence, a way to honor her father that didn't require becoming him. I need to see it, Mara said, the building, in person. Tomorrow. I'll drive you. That night, Mara finally opened the boxes her father had left behind. She did it alone, in her room, with the door locked and the lights low. Privacy for grief she'd never been allowed to feel. The first box held clothes, suits that smelled like mothballs and time, shoes that were outdated but well made, a leather jacket that probably cost a fortune in 1987. She held the jacket to her face, trying to find some trace of him in the leather. Found nothing but age and storage. The second box was photographs. Domenico as a young man, serious and handsome. Domenico with other men. The Don, younger and harder. Sal Moretti, before guilt had carved lines in his face. Others she didn't recognize. Domenico laughing at some joke lost to time. Domenico looking at someone off camera with an expression that could only be love. Lucia. The photograph was slightly blurred, caught mid-motion, but her grandmother's beauty was evident even through the imperfection. Young, fierce, smiling at the man behind the camera. The third box held letters, some addressed to Lucia, never sent. Some addressed to my child, written to a future that never arrived. Mara read them all, her hands shaking, tears she didn't remember starting streaming down her face. Dear Lucia, I'm not good with words the way you are. I'm better with numbers, with structures, with building things that last. But I need you to know I love you in ways I don't have language for. You make me want to be better than I am, cleaner, more honest. You make me want to build instead of break. I've been talking with Don Rinaldi about going legitimate, taking the family's construction business fully legal. No more side deals, no more gray areas, just honest work, honest money. He's resistant, but I think I can convince him. I think I can show him there's more profit in playing by the rules than in breaking them. I want to marry you. I want to build a life that our children won't have to escape from. I want them to be proud of their father instead of afraid of what he might be. I'm saving money. I've got almost enough for a ring, the one you pointed out that day in the Diamond District, the one you said you'd never want but looked at like it held the moon. Wait for me. I'm almost there. Yours, Domenico. The letter was dated March 10th, 1987, 5 days before he died. Mara pressed the paper to her chest and let herself cry properly for the first time since this started. Cried for the father she'd never known, for the grandmother who'd loved him enough to run, for the life that could have been if one man's greed hadn't destroyed everything. When the tears finally stopped, she felt emptied out. Hollow. But maybe hollow was good. Maybe hollow meant room for something new. She found the letter addressed to his unborn child near the bottom of the box. To my son or daughter, I'm writing this because the world I live in doesn't guarantee tomorrow. Because I've made enemies, taken risks, and walked lines that good men shouldn't walk. Because I need you to know some things, just in case. First, your mother is the strongest person I've ever known. If you're reading this and I'm not there, she'll raise you right. Trust her. Listen to her. She knows things about surviving that I'm still learning. Second, money doesn't define worth. I've made a lot of it, saved most of it, and I'm leaving it to you. Not because I think it'll make you happy, but because I want you to have choices. The choice to walk away from this life if you want. The choice to build something clean. Third, this world, the one I work in, it's built on fear and respect and the kind of loyalty that gets people killed. Don't romanticize it. It's not honor, it's not family. It's survival dressed up in Italian and expensive suits. If you can avoid it, do. If you can't, if the blood pulls you back, at least try to be better than we were. Try to build instead of break. Fourth, I love you. I loved you before I knew you existed, before you were more than possibility. And if I'm not there to tell you in person, know that every choice I made in the end was trying to build a future where you could be safe. Your father, Domenico. Milano. Mara folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the box. Her father had tried to escape, had tried to build something clean, and he died for it. She wouldn't let that death be meaningless. Morning came with Victor knocking, coffee in hand, car keys jingling. Ready? The building in person was more impressive than the photograph suggested. 4 stories of brick and possibility, windows tall enough to flood the interior with light. The neighborhood was mixed, old-timers who remembered the garment factories, young families priced out of Manhattan, immigrants building new lives from scratch. Inside, the space was raw, exposed brick, original hardwood floors beneath decades of grime, high ceilings that made even Victor's voice echo. It smelled like dust and potential. The factory closed in 1995, Victor said, consulting his phone. Sat empty for a while, got bought and sold a few times, ended up in the Calabrese portfolio somehow. Never got developed because the neighborhood wasn't hot enough yet. Mara walked through the space, her footsteps loud in the emptiness. She could see it. Classrooms on the 2nd floor, job training centers on the 3rd, community gathering spaces on the 1st, childcare in the basement, resources for people who needed them. How much would it cost, she asked, to renovate, to actually make this work? Victor had clearly already run the numbers. Ballpark? $3 million for full renovation? Another $1 million for first-year operating costs, staffing, programming, outreach. You'd need grants, partnerships, maybe some city funding. He looked at her. It's ambitious. It's risky. It might fail. So did my father's plan, Mara said. Didn't make it less worth trying. She spent the next 3 days meeting with architects, with community organizers, with people who knew how to turn empty buildings into living spaces. Victor connected her with lawyers who specialized in nonprofits, with accountants who understood how to structure charitable foundations. The Don watched from a distance, approving budgets, opening doors, but letting Mara drive the process. This was hers, not his, not the family's. Hers. On the 6th day, Sal Moretti called. I heard what you're doing with the factory, the community center. Word travels fast. Always does in this city. Sal paused. I want to help. I've got skills, building, managing projects. I've got time. And I owe your father more than I can ever repay. Let me do this, please. Mara thought about justice, about redemption, about the difference between punishment and allowing people to earn their way back. Okay, she said, but you work for me. Not as penance, as an employee. You do the job right or you're gone. Yes, ma'am. The relief in Sal's voice was palpable. Thank you. The pieces started falling into place with surprising speed. The building got permits, contractors got hired, the foundation got established, the Domenico Milano Community Center, serving the neighborhood her grandmother had once worked in. Mara threw herself into the work, 12-hour days of planning and problem-solving and learning on the fly. It was exhausting. It was terrifying. It was the first thing in her adult life that felt real. 2 weeks after the confrontation with Gallo, Luca knocked on Mara's door at the townhouse. "We found Russo." Mara's stomach dropped. "Where?" "Newark Airport, trying to board a flight to Argentina." Luca's expression was neutral. "He's been handled. Won't be a problem anymore." Handled. The euphemism was clear enough. "Did he suffer?" Mara asked. "Does it matter?" She thought about it, about justice versus revenge, about the man who'd tried to kill her in that Red Hook alley. "No, I guess it doesn't." Later that night, Victor found her on the roof deck, her now usual refuge when the townhouse felt too small. "You okay?" he asked. "Russo's dead." "I heard." Victor sat beside her. "You feel guilty about that?" "I should, right? A man's dead because of me. Because I got involved in this. A man's dead because he accepted money to kill people, because he made choices." Victor handed her a beer. "You didn't pull the trigger. You didn't hire him. You were just the target who refused to die quietly." They drank in silence, watching the city lights. "I'm moving out," Mara said finally. "Tomorrow. Got an apartment in Brooklyn, near the center. Nothing fancy, just mine." "My father will argue." "Let him. I'm grateful for everything, but I need space. Need to figure out who I am when I'm not surrounded by all this." She gestured vaguely at the townhouse, at Sutton Place, at the world of privilege and violence that had consumed the last weeks. "Fair enough," Victor smiled. "But you're still family. Still invited to Sunday dinners. Still expected to show up occasionally so my father doesn't send search parties." "Deal." The apartment was a one-bedroom in Williamsburg, close enough to the center to walk, far enough from Sutton Place to breathe. Mara furnished it slowly, carefully, with things she chose instead of inherited. IKEA instead of antiques. Posters instead of oil paintings. Her space, her rules. The Don visited once, surveyed the place with an expression that might have been amusement or horror. "This is what $18 million buys?" he asked. "This is what independence looks like," Mara corrected. He sat in her second-hand armchair, looked slightly ridiculous in the modest space. "Your father would approve." Domenico never liked ostentation, said people who needed to show off their wealth were usually compensating for something. Smart man. He was. The Don accepted the coffee she offered. "I wanted to tell you, the community center, what you're building, it's good work, important work, the kind of legacy that actually matters. It's going to take years to get off the ground properly." "Good things usually do." The Don sipped his coffee, made a face. "This is terrible." "It's bodega coffee. It's supposed to be terrible." He laughed, genuine and unexpected. "You really are Domenico's daughter. He used to drink the same swill, said expensive coffee was for people with too much money and not enough taste." They talked for an hour, about nothing important, about the center's progress, about Victor's efforts to legitimize the remaining family businesses, about the small, incremental work of building something clean from a dirty foundation. When he left, Mara felt something she hadn't expected. Not love exactly, but connection. Family, in a way that didn't require blood or obligation. Just choice. The weeks blurred into months. The center took shape slowly. Walls went up, systems got installed, programs got developed. Mara hired staff, built partnerships, learned the 1,000 small details that separated good intentions from actual impact. She was conducting an interview for an ESL teacher position when Victor texted, "Turn on the news, Channel 7. The broadcast showed federal agents outside a building in Switzerland. The ticker read, "Former NYC developer Antonio Gallo arrested on money laundering charges." Mara watched as Gallo was led out in handcuffs, looking smaller than she remembered. Diminished? Just another old man who'd gambled and lost. Victor called immediately. The Swiss authorities received an anonymous tip, detailed financial records showing decades of illegal transactions. Funny how that happens. Funny, Mara agreed. My father didn't want him walking free, even in exile, so we made some calls, provided some evidence, let the law handle it. Victor's voice was satisfied. He'll spend the rest of his life in a Swiss prison. No deals, no early release, Justice properly served. Mara felt something settle in her chest. Not satisfaction exactly, but closure. The door on that chapter finally firmly shut. 6 months after the confrontation at Azzurro, the Domenico Milano Community Center opened its doors. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was small, local, neighborhood families, city council members who actually cared, reporters from community papers. The Don attended, wearing a suit that probably cost more than the center's first month operating budget. He didn't make a speech, didn't draw attention to himself, just stood in the back and watched as Mara addressed the crowd. "This center exists because of a man I never met," she said. "My father, Domenico Milano, believed that real strength wasn't in taking, it was in building, in creating opportunities, in making the world slightly less hard for people who needed help." She looked at the faces in the crowd, at the neighborhood that would be served. He didn't get to build his dream, but maybe his daughter can build it for him. The applause was warm, genuine. Mara cut the ribbon, and people flooded in to explore the spaces, the classrooms, the computer lab, the childcare facility, the job training center. Sal gave tours, pride evident in every gesture. This was his redemption, built in brick and sweat and determination. Victor found her an hour later after the crowds had thinned. "You did good." "We did good," Mara corrected. "Couldn't have done it without your connections, your father's money, the family's support." "But it's yours, your vision, your execution." Victor smiled. "Domenico would be proud. My father is proud, even if he's too stubborn to say it properly." They stood together, watching kids run through halls that would teach them English, teach them skills, give them chances, watching possibility take shape. "So what now?" Victor asked. "You've built the center, proven you can do it. What's next?" Mara thought about it. About the invisible girl who'd poured wine for people who never saw her face. About the woman she'd become, visible, powerful, purposeful. "Now we build the second one," she said, "and the third, and we keep building until every neighborhood has one." She looked at Victor. "Your father wanted to go legitimate, wanted to build something that helped instead of hurt. This is how we do it. One community at a time." Victor extended his hand. "Partners?" Mara shook it. "Partners." The city continued outside, indifferent and eternal. But in Brooklyn, in a renovated garment factory, something new was growing. Something that didn't require violence or fear, just determination, resources, and the kind of hope that refused to die even when everything said it should. Mara Vance wasn't invisible anymore. She was building, and she was just getting started. The second center opened in the Bronx 9 months later, and that's when the trouble started. Not the violent kind, those days, Mara hoped, were behind her. This trouble came in spreadsheets and zoning boards, and the kind of bureaucratic resistance that couldn't be solved with recordings or confrontations. The city wanted the centers, but they also wanted control, wanted oversight, wanted their fingerprints on something that was getting positive press. Mara sat across from Deputy Mayor Richardson in an office that smelled like old carpet and newer ambitions. Richardson was 50, perfectly coiffed, with the kind of smile that never reached the calculation behind it. "Miss Vance, nobody's questioning your intentions," Richardson said. The tone was patronizing, careful. "But these community centers require city resources. Fire inspections, health department oversight, educational licensing. We need to ensure proper compliance." "We're fully compliant," Mara said. "Every permit, every license, every inspection passed. You've got the documentation." Documentation provided by contractors with interesting connections. Richardson slid a folder across the desk. Inside, photographs. Sal Moretti shaking hands with a city inspector. Luca having coffee near a zoning office. Victor entering a municipal building downtown. They'd been following her people, building a case that wasn't about compliance. It was about leverage. "You're suggesting impropriety," Mara said carefully. "I'm suggesting that when a project gets fast-tracked through departments that usually move at glacial speed, people notice. They ask questions." Richardson leaned back, the picture of reasonable concern. Questions about who's really behind these centers, about whether the Rinaldi family is laundering money through nonprofit work. There it was, the accusation wrapped in concern.
The Rinaldi family has been going legitimate for years, Mara said. Every dollar is accounted for. Every transaction's clean. If you want to audit the foundation, audit it. You'll find nothing but proper bookkeeping. Oh, I believe you. Richardson's smile was sharp. But perception matters. And right now, the perception is that organized crime is buying goodwill through charity work. That's not a narrative this administration wants associated with our community development programs. What do you want? Mara asked. No point dancing around it. Partnership, official city involvement. We provide funding. You provide the execution. The centers get city branding, our people on the boards, our oversight on all decisions. Richardson pulled out another document. It's a generous offer. Secures your funding long-term, gives you legitimacy, makes everyone happy. Except it means surrendering control. It means collaboration. Richardson's voice was smooth. Think about it, Miss Vance. You're trying to build an empire of goodwill, but you're doing it with a last name that carries weight. Milano might be your father's name, but everyone knows you're connected to Rinaldi. That connection will always be questioned, unless you have the city's seal of approval. Mara took the document, didn't read it. I'll consider it. Don't take too long. City budgets get approved quarterly. Miss this window and your third center might face delays. The threat was polite, bureaucratic, and completely clear. Outside Richardson's office, Mara called Victor. We have a problem. They met at a coffee shop in Chelsea, the kind of place where nobody knew them and nobody cared. Victor listened as she explained Richardson's offer, his expression darkening with each detail. It's a shakedown, he said flatly, dressed up in government language, but still a shakedown. They want control so they can take credit. And if you refuse, they'll bury you in red tape until the foundation runs dry. Can they do that? They're the city. They can do whatever they want. Victor stirred his coffee, thinking. My father has connections in the mayor's office. We could make calls, apply pressure. Which proves Richardson's point, that everything I build requires Rinaldi muscle to survive. Mara shook her head. I didn't escape one trap to walk into another. Then what? Mara thought about her father's letters, about building clean, about creating something that didn't require the old ways to function. We call their bluff. We go completely transparent, open our books to full public audit, invite journalists to tour the centers, show everyone there's nothing to hide, make it impossible for Richardson to claim impropriety without looking like he's attacking successful community programs out of spite. Victor smiled slowly. That's actually brilliant, and it'll make Richardson look terrible if he keeps pushing. Politicians hate bad press more than they hate losing control. Then that's what we do. The press conference was Mara's idea, but Victor helped execute it. They rented space in the Bronx Center, invited every news outlet in the city, and opened the foundation's books completely. Every dollar tracked, every expenditure documented, every connection disclosed. Mara stood at a podium in front of cameras and reporters and curious community members, and she told the truth. My name is Mara Vance, she said. My father was Domenico Milano. He worked in construction for the Rinaldi family in the 1980s. He was killed in 1987 for discovering financial crimes committed by people he trusted. My grandmother fled to protect me. She raised me to be invisible, to stay safe, to avoid the world my father died trying to improve. The room was silent except for cameras clicking. A year ago, I stopped being invisible. I learned who my father was, what he wanted to build, and why he died. I inherited his money. Money he earned legitimately, saved carefully, and left to his family. And I decided to honor his memory by building what he couldn't. Community centers that provide real resources to people who need them. Job training, education, childcare, language classes. The things that actually change lives. She gestured to the room around them, to the families who used the center. These centers are funded by my father's legacy. They're managed by professionals. They're audited quarterly by independent firms. Every dollar is tracked. Every decision is transparent. And yes, I have connections to the Rinaldi family. Victor Rinaldi is my business partner. Don Alessio Rinaldi is... She paused, chose her words carefully. Family. But these centers aren't fronts. They're not money laundering. They're not organized crime and charitable clothing. They're exactly what they appear to be. Help for people who need it. A reporter in the front raised her hand. Miss Vance,
Deputy Mayor Richardson has suggested that your permits were expedited through improper influence. How do you respond? I respond that every permit was applied for properly, processed through normal channels, and approved based on merit. If inspectors moved quickly, it's because our contractors did excellent work and our applications were complete. If that's suspicious, then I guess we're guilty of being competent. Another reporter. Are you challenging the city's oversight? No, I'm inviting it. Full audit, full transparency. Come examine our books, tour our facilities, interview our staff and the families we serve. If you find anything improper, report it. We have nothing to hide. Mara met the camera directly, but I won't surrender control of these centers to politicians who want to use them as photo opportunities. My father died trying to build something clean. I'm not letting his legacy become someone else's campaign material. The press ate it up. By evening, the story was everywhere. Local news, social media, even national outlets picking it up. The narrative wasn't about Rinaldi connections anymore. It was about a young woman honoring her murdered father by building community resources, and bureaucrats trying to co-opt her work. Richardson's office released a statement about productive ongoing discussions. Translation: retreat. Victor called that night, laughing. You just pantsed the deputy mayor on live television. My father's proud. Also slightly terrified of you. Good, Mara said. Fear keeps people honest. But the victory felt hollow somehow. She'd won the battle with Richardson, protected the center's independence, but she'd done it by leaning into her father's story, by making herself visible in exactly the way her grandmother had spent 15 years trying to prevent. The Dawn summoned her 2 days later. Not a request, a summons. Carlo picked her up in the Mercedes, drove in silence to Sutton Place. The townhouse felt different now. Mara had been living independently for months, building her own life. Walking back into this space felt like visiting a museum of someone else's history. The Dawn was in his study, older somehow. The year had worn on him. Gallo's betrayal, the reorganization of his businesses, the weight of discovering he'd killed an innocent man. He looked tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. Sit, he said. Not unkind, just direct. Mara sat. I watched your press conference, the Dawn said. You handled Richardson well, better than I would have. I'd have made threats, flexed muscle, solved it the old way. You solved it with truth, with transparency, with strategy that doesn't require violence. He poured 2 glasses of wine. Your father would be proud. I'm proud. Thank you. But I'm also concerned. The Don sipped his wine. You made yourself a target. Not from people like Richardson. You neutralized that threat. From others. People who see what you're building and want to destroy it. Not for profit, just for spite. Or ideology. Or because they hate seeing good things exist. I can handle it. Can you? The Don's voice was gentle. You've been lucky so far. Gallo's in prison. Russo's dead. The immediate threats are gone. But this world, even the legitimate parts, attracts sharks. People who'll try to use your centers for their own purposes. Politicians who'll try to control them. Criminals who'll try to hide behind them. You've built something valuable. That makes it vulnerable. So what do you suggest? I suggest you let me help. Officially. The Don set down his glass, not as silent partner, not as shadow supporter, as board member, as investor with his name on the paperwork. I bring my resources, my connections, my protection. You keep control, keep your vision, but you stop pretending you're doing this alone. Mara felt the offer's weight. Accepting meant tying herself permanently to the Rinaldi name, meant admitting that independence was an illusion, meant her father's dream of something completely clean would always carry the taint of where the money came from. Why? She asked. Why do you care this much? The Don was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. Because I killed your father. Because I spent 38 years living with that guilt. Because every time I see you, I see him. See what he could have built if I'd been smarter, less trusting, less quick to believe the easy lie. He met her eyes. I can't fix what I did. Can't bring him back. But I can make sure his daughter doesn't fail. Can make sure his dream actually gets built, even if it's a generation late. That's not redemption. That's just guilt. Maybe they're the same thing.
The Don's smile was sad. Your grandmother understood something I'm only learning now, that the best way to honor the dead is to protect the living. She spent 15 years keeping you safe. Let me spend whatever time I have left doing the same. Mara thought about Lucia, about the sacrifices made, the secrets kept, the life rebuilt from nothing, about how her grandmother had died without ever seeing justice for Domenico, without knowing that her granddaughter would finish what her daughter's father started. Okay, Mara said. But conditions. You're on the board, but you don't control it. You provide resources, but you don't dictate how they're used. And the first time you try to use the centers for anything that isn't their mission, the first hint of impropriety, you're out. No arguments, no negotiations. Out. The Don extended his hand. Deal. They shook, and something settled between them. Not forgiveness, that was too big, too complicated, but understanding, partnership, family by choice instead of blood. The third center opened in Queens 6 months later, fully funded, properly permitted, with zero interference from Richardson's office. The press covered it positively. The community embraced it. The model was working. Mara stood at the opening ceremony beside the Don, beside Victor, beside Sal. 4 people connected by violence and death, now building something that created life instead. A reporter approached after the ribbon cutting. Miss Vance, you've built 3 centers in 18 months. What's next? 4th center breaks ground in Staten Island next month, Mara said. 5th is planned for another Bronx neighborhood. We're also launching a scholarship program. Full rides to community college for any kid who completes our job training programs. That's ambitious. My father was ambitious. I'm just finally catching up. The reporter scribbled notes. And the Rinaldi family's involvement, some people still question. Let them question, Victor interrupted smoothly. The work speaks for itself. We're not asking anyone to forget history. We're asking them to acknowledge that people can change, that legacies can be rebuilt, that the sins of one generation don't have to define the next. The reporter left satisfied. The crowd dispersed. The sun set on another successful opening. That night, Mara returned to her apartment in Williamsburg, exhausted and satisfied. Her phone showed a dozen messages, congratulations from staff, funding inquiries from potential donors, interview requests from media, and one message from an unknown number. Your grandmother would be proud. She knew this day would come. She prepared you for it without telling you. Smart woman. A friend Mara stared at the message. The mysterious ally who'd been helping from the shadows, who'd verified her inheritance, protected her interests, guided her toward evidence when she needed it. She typed, "Who are you?" The response came after a long pause. Someone who owed Domenico everything. Someone who's been honoring that debt for 38 years. Someone who can finally rest now, knowing his daughter finished what he started. Be well, Mara Vance. You're exactly what this world needs. The number went dead. When Mara tried calling back, she got a disconnected tone. Another ghost, fading back into the city's anonymous millions. Another piece of her father's legacy, task completed. The months blurred into a year. The centers thrived. The foundation grew. Mara hired a proper staff, delegated responsibilities, learned to build systems that didn't require her constant attention. She also learned to sleep again, to go days without looking over her shoulder, to believe that maybe, possibly, the violence was actually behind her. Victor became more than a business partner, became a friend, someone she could call at midnight when the pressure got overwhelming, someone who understood the weight of inherited expectations, of trying to build something clean from dirty foundations. They were reviewing expansion plans one evening when Victor's phone rang. He looked at the screen, his expression shifting. "It's the prison," he said, "in Switzerland." He answered, listened, his face going carefully neutral. When he hung up, he sat in silence for a moment. "Gallo's dead," he said finally. "Heart attack. Quick." The warden said he was reading when it happened, just stopped. Mara felt something release in her chest. The last connection to her father's death, severed. "How do you feel about it?" "I don't know. He was a liar and a murderer, but he was also part of my childhood, part of my father's history." Victor rubbed his face. "Mostly I feel tired, like I've been carrying something heavy and finally got to set it down." "Yeah," Mara said. "I know that feeling." They sat in silence. Two people shaped by old violence, building new futures,
processing the death of a man who'd caused so much pain. My father will want a funeral, Victor said. Not for Gallo, for closure, for the ritual of putting the past in the ground. Will you go? Will you? Mara thought about it. About facing the man who'd orchestrated her father's death one last time, even if he was in a coffin. About whether she needed that closure or if moving forward was enough. No, she said. I don't need to see him buried. I need to see what I'm building thrive. That's my closure. Victor smiled. Domenico's daughter, practical to the end. The funeral happened without her. The Don attended, Victor at his side, and they buried Antonio Gallo in a plot far from the men he'd betrayed. No grand ceremony, no speeches about honor, just earth returning to earth. When Victor returned, he looked lighter somehow. It's done, he said simply. Good, Mara replied. Now, let's build the fifth center. 2 years after that night in Azzurro, Mara stood in front of a mirror in a dress that cost more than her first month's rent had. The occasion was a fundraising gala. Black tie, expensive tickets, the kind of event where wealthy people paid money to feel good about helping the less fortunate. Mara had learned to tolerate these events, had learned to smile, shake hands, make small talk with donors who wanted to feel connected to something meaningful. It was part of the work, the necessary evil of fundraising. Victor knocked on her door. He wore his tuxedo-like armor, comfortable in these spaces in ways Mara was still learning. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be. The gala was at the plaza, because of course it was. Crystal chandeliers, orchestra music, waiters carrying champagne that probably cost more per glass than Mara used to make per hour. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent 3 years serving people like this at Azzurro. Now she was one of them, or close enough that the difference didn't matter. The Don arrived fashionably late, moving through the crowd like visiting royalty. People knew who he was, knew his history. But they also knew his money was good, his checks cleared, and his support of the Milano centers was genuine. Redemption through charity. Legacy rebuilt one donation at a time. Mara gave her speech at 9, talked about the center's impact, the families served, the futures changed, showed photographs of kids who'd learned English, adults who'd found jobs, communities that had been strengthened. The applause was warm. The donations were generous. By the end of the night, they'd raised enough to fund 2 more centers. Victor found her on the balcony afterward, escaping the crowd's noise. You did good, he said. Natural, confident, like you've been doing this your whole life. I've been faking it for 2 years. I'm getting better at the performance. It's not all performance. Victor leaned against the railing beside her. You care about this work. That comes through. People respond to authenticity. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city below. Manhattan at night, still beautiful despite everything they knew about its darker corners. Can I ask you something? Mara said. Personal. Always. Do you ever regret it? Staying in the family business, even the legitimate parts. Do you ever wish you'd walked away completely? Victor was quiet for a long moment. Every day. And never. He looked at her. It's my name. My legacy. I can't escape it any more than you can escape being Domenico's daughter. So instead of running, I'm trying to reshape it. Make Rinaldi mean something other than fear. Make it mean opportunity, progress, the kind of power that builds instead of destroys. Think we'll succeed? Ask me in 20 years. Victor smiled. But yeah, I think we have a shot. The gala wound down. Donors left satisfied, their tickets tax deductible, their consciences clear for another year. Mara and Victor rode back to Brooklyn in the Mercedes, Carlo driving in his usual silence. My father wants to talk to you, Victor said. Tomorrow. He said it's important. About? He didn't say, but he seemed, I don't know, lighter somehow, like he'd made a decision. The Don was waiting in his study the next morning, dressed casually for once, slacks and a cardigan that made him look grandfatherly instead of dangerous. Mara, thank you for coming. He gestured to a chair. I've been thinking about the future, about legacy, about what happens when I'm gone. You're not dying, are you? The concern was automatic, surprising her. We're all dying, just at different speeds. The Don smiled. But no, I'm healthy enough for now. This is about planning, about making sure the work continues after I'm gone. He pulled out a folder, slid it across the desk. This is my will, updated last week. The legitimate businesses, the construction companies, the real estate holdings, the investments, they're all going to Victor. He'll manage them, continue the transition to completely clean operations. That's good. The foundation, though, the Milano centers, the scholarship programs, all of it, I'm leaving it to you. Full control, full ownership. My financial stake becomes yours, along with a trust that ensures funding in perpetuity. The Dawn met her eyes. I want you to have the resources to build this empire properly, to make it bigger than me, bigger than Victor, bigger than any single person, to make it permanent. Mara stared at the document. The numbers were staggering. Enough money to build 50 centers, 100, to change entire neighborhoods, entire generations. Why? She asked. Because your father should have lived to build this. Because your grandmother sacrificed everything to keep you safe. Because you've proven you can handle it. You don't use the money for power, you use it for purpose. That's rare. The Dawn leaned back. I'm 75, Mara. I've got maybe 10 years left if I'm lucky. I want to spend them watching you build something that outlasts all of us. I want to die knowing I helped create something good. That's the only redemption I'll ever get. Mara felt tears threatening, forced them back. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll take this burden. Say you'll build what Domenico dreamed of. Yes, Mara said. I'll build it. I'll make it permanent. The Dawn stood, came around the desk, pulled her into an embrace that was awkward and genuine. Thank you for giving an old man hope, for proving people can change, for being exactly what this family needed. 5 years after that night at Azzurro, Mara stood in front of the 10th Milano Center, this one in Harlem, serving a neighborhood that had been overlooked for decades. The ribbon cutting was routine now, familiar. Politicians showed up for photos. Community members celebrated. The press documented it all. But this opening felt different, special. Because sitting in the front row, looking proud and ancient, was the Dawn. Beside him, Victor. Beside them, Sal Moretti and a dozen staff members who'd become family through work instead of blood. And in the back, barely visible, a handful of older men and women who'd known Domenico, who'd worked with him, believed in him, mourned him, who'd stayed silent for 38 years and were finally seeing his vision realized. After the ceremony, one of them approached. A woman in her 70s, elegant, with eyes that held decades of secrets. Mara Vance, she said. I'm Angela Benedetti. I was your grandmother's best friend. Before she left. Before everything. Mara's breath caught. You knew her. Knew her, loved her, helped her escape when it all fell apart. Angela's smile was sad. She made me promise never to contact you. Said it was safer if you didn't know about her past, about the people she'd left behind. But she also made me promise to watch over you, to make sure you were okay. The mysterious texts, the help, that was you? Some of it. I had help. Friends who owed Domenico, people who believed in what he wanted to build. Angela touched Mara's arm. Your grandmother would be so proud. This, she gestured to the center, this is exactly what she hoped for, what she dreamed you'd become. I wish she'd lived to see it. She did, in a way. She saw it in you, saw the potential, the strength. She raised you to be invisible so you could survive long enough to become visible on your own terms. Angela pulled out a letter, old and worn. She wrote this before she died, made me promise I'd give it to you when you were ready. I think you're ready now. Mara took the letter with trembling hands, her grandmother's handwriting, the familiar slant and curl of Italian script. Mia cara Mara, if you're reading this, you found your way home. Not to the past, that's buried and gone, but to your purpose, to the work your father died trying to start. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything. Sorry I made you invisible, made you hide, made you believe you were nobody. But I saw the danger coming, saw how men like Gallo would use you, hurt you, destroy you to protect their secrets. So I hid you, raised you quiet, raised you smart, raised you to survive first and thrive later. I hope I lived long enough to see you thrive. But if I didn't, know that I believed in you.
Believed you'd find the truth when you were strong enough to handle it. Believed you'd build what Domenico couldn't. Believed you'd be exactly what this world needs. Your father loved you before he knew you existed. I loved you every day of your life. That love doesn't end just because we're gone. It transforms. It becomes the foundation you build on. Be brave, Piccola. Be strong. Be visible when you need to be, and invisible when survival requires it. But most of all, be yourself. Not me, not your father, not the ghosts of people who came before. Yourself. That's enough. That's more than enough. Con tutto il mio amore, Nonna Lucia Mara read the letter 3 times, tears streaming freely now. Around her, the celebration continued, but in this moment, she was alone with her grandmother's words, with the love that had shaped her entire life without her knowing it. Angela waited patiently. When Mara finally looked up, the older woman smiled. She knew, Angela said, knew you'd find your way, knew the truth couldn't stay buried forever. She just wanted you to be strong enough to survive it when it surfaced. Thank you, Mara managed, for watching over me, for keeping her promise. It was my honor. Angela squeezed her hand. Now I can finally rest. My debt to Lucia is paid. She left as quietly as she'd arrived, disappearing into the crowd. Another ghost. Task completed. The dawn found Mara an hour later, still holding the letter. You okay? He asked. Yeah. Mara folded the letter carefully, tucked it into her jacket. Just saying goodbye. To? To the person I was before all this. To invisibility. To the idea that I could ever go back to being nobody. She looked at the center, at the people streaming through its doors. This is who I am now. Builder, protector. Domenico Milano's daughter. Lucia Salvatore's granddaughter. Visible, vulnerable, but purposeful. The dawn nodded slowly. Your father would be proud. I'm proud. And I hope, I finally earned the right to be part of what you're building. You have, Mara said. Your family. Not because of blood, because of choice, because of what we're building together. They stood in silence, watching the 10th Center come to life, watching possibility take shape in brick and programs and community. 7 years after that night at Azzurro, the Milano Centers numbered 23. They served 12,000 families annually. They'd placed over 5,000 people in permanent jobs. They'd taught English to 15,000 immigrants. They'd provided childcare for working parents, after-school programs for at-risk kids, job training for the unemployed. The empire of goodwill Mara had promised was real, permanent, growing. Victor had stepped back from active involvement, focusing on the family's business interests. But he remained on the board, remained a partner, remained the friend who'd helped build the foundation. The Don had died peacefully in his sleep at 78, surrounded by family. His funeral had been huge, old world and new, criminals and politicians, people who'd feared him and people who'd loved him. Mara had given the eulogy, talking about redemption and legacy and the possibility of change. She'd meant every word. In his will, the Don had left everything as promised. The foundation's endowment was secure for generations. The work would continue long after everyone involved was dust. Mara stood in her office, a real office now, in a building the foundation owned, and looked at the map on her wall. Red pins marked existing centers. Blue pins marked locations in development. Green pins marked future expansion targets. The city was slowly turning red. Her phone rang. Private number. Mara Vance? Miss Vance, this is Governor Chen's office. The governor would like to discuss expanding the Milano Center model statewide. Would you be available for a meeting next week? Mara smiled. I'll make time. After hanging up, she pulled out the photograph she kept on her desk. Her father, young and idealistic, standing outside Milano restaurant. Beside it, the letter from her grandmother, framed and preserved. 2 ghosts who'd shaped everything, who'd died in sacrifice so she could stand here, in this moment, building what they'd dreamed of. We did it, she whispered to the photograph. We actually did it. Outside her window, Brooklyn sprawled in all its chaotic beauty. The borough where her grandmother had hidden, where her father had worked, where Mara had been invisible and then learned to be seen, where she'd built an empire that didn't require violence, that didn't need fear,
that thrived on purpose instead of power. The invisible girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd inherited violence and chosen to build peace, who'd inherited money made in darkness and used it to create light, who'd inherited a name associated with crime and made it synonymous with community. Mara Vance, daughter of Domenico Milano, granddaughter of Lucia Salvatore, builder of futures, keeper of legacies. Living proof that the sins of the past didn't have to define the present. She turned from the window, back to her desk, to the plans for Center 24. The work was never done. Would never be done. But that was okay. She'd found her purpose in the rubble of her father's murder, had built something permanent from the ashes of her grandmother's sacrifice, had proven that power could be redefined, that legacy could be rebuilt, that redemption was possible even for those who thought they were beyond saving. The Dawn had been right about one thing. She was exactly what this family needed. But more than that, she was exactly what she needed. Not invisible, not hiding, not running, just building. One center at a time. One life changed at a time. One generation freed from the past at a time. Her father would be proud. Her grandmother would be at peace. And Mara Vance, for the first time in her life, was exactly where she belonged.